Um,
We're recording.
all right. There is a company. I mean, first off, I think Thailand is one of the biggest entrepreneurial cities in the world.
Hmm.
Um, Thailand city, country. There are just if you study 5 years in a university
Mm-hmm.
and then regardless of whatever it is that you kind of learned during that time, you come out, your salary is still, the starting point is still around 800 USD dollars, full-time salary. It's insane.
That's crazy. Yeah.
At a successful noodle shop that is right next to the street, you see an old woman or man selling noodles. Those people are at least bringing in $2,500 a month, at least, easily. So there is a mindset here that I mean, it's great to have education, but from the start, you need to make money. And people are so open-minded to new things here just because of that mentality, just new things popping up in every corner and everywhere. And there are so many inspirational kind of stories here where a noodle shop turned into a massive restaurant, or even, CP was just a farm, just one farm, and then turned into this massive conglomerate here. And because of it, so many students have so many side hustles.
Yeah.
Ones that actually make money, compared to European side hustle. It's just a side projects. We haven't figured out how to make money from it, or we're not charging, but there is this beautiful app or whatever.
Yeah.
But for these people, money is a way to stay alive. And in most cases is really that black and white. So the easiest thing that they usually do is they make their own clothes. There are so many manufacturers here, but then also they just swap tags on things that already exist. So there are factories in China, and most companies, even a lot of companies in the US and Europe, are doing the same thing. I'm not saying Daniel Wellington is doing it, but pretty close. So you find a factory that does kind of a good product, and they sell this as a service. It's kind of a SaaS solution of theirs. Tell us what your design is. You can customize it just a little bit, and then you can just put your brand on top of it, and then they ship it to your customers. So they take care of the entire thing, and you just take care of the marketing. And everything is made by you, designed by you. All of the branding stuff, you're 100% owning it. So a lot of people have it here. And like with the brand that we just talked about, like Outlier, I'm not surprised. Like more companies like that are actually being manufactured here in Thailand, just because of such a low cost. But it's such a cool city to live in, where it's people kind of always surprise you. Yeah, I have a side business that actually brings in. There's this.
Why do you think this is? What's the history of Thailand? I just did like a quick look, and there seems to be historically, I mean, that region of the world, there was a lot of conquest and fighting, but it seems like Thailand was a country that sort of held its own and like carved out this space and held everyone off. I did a quick scan because I'm curious where that mindset comes from. There's like an entrepreneurialism that's different than the United States, because the United States also has this sort of like hustle and like make money, but it doesn't feel like what you're talking about. Like there's a different felt sense of it, but I'm trying to distinguish what it is.
I'm still an outsider. I've been living here for a couple of years now, in and out most years. But I think for me, it comes down to two things. One, the openness of people trying new things. That's very limiting in Sweden. So even if you're offering a good thing, most people don't go out of their routines or things that they like to try something new. They don't like to be surprised. But in here they are. And then the second thing is, this country is very poor. And the contrast here, it's not the entire country is poor. You can
Right.
see the contrast. There are some successful people and there are some very, very poor people. The middle doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Um, so people actually see day to day the life that they could have. And the starting point for them, it's just so easy to get something off and running, because people don't think too big here. They can afford thinking big. So they are thinking, all right, I have this. How can I make money from this? I go collect plastic and I, give it to this guy and I take cash and I take that cash and I, buy a bike and I, kind of use it as a Uber,
Yep.
drive people around and
Yep.
then take that money and make my own noodle shop next to the street or whatever the next step is. But they keep doing it because the salaries of most jobs are not enough for your rent and your food. So they need to have a side thing. It's kind of, you have to have it to be able to stay alive.
Yep. Be interesting to visit there and see what the energy is like, because it feels like a very alive city too, Bangkok.
Super alive, yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. I wonder if part of it is there's a shared sense of the hustle. Like there's a lot of people, like you said, that don't have, and so everyone understands that everyone else is in this mindset. This is why they're open to things. So I'll spend a little money on what you're doing or help you with your, moving this to that, like the pipeline you just described, because they're like, I want to do that too. So I'm going to help, I'll be part of your pipeline, or I'll purchase some of your goods because like I get what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I have a friend named Jade who lives out there. She just opened a shop, like a studio. She's been doing like designer toys and stuff. She's an artist, and has them like distributed in like Hot Topic and a bunch of other places now. And
Hot Topic, how funny.
yeah, she moved out there, I don't know, 2, 3 years ago as well, maybe a little bit longer, with her family. And yeah, like doing what she's doing in New York or something, probably not, it wouldn't be
Not
possible.
possible.
It would be so
Especially a
expensive.
storefront. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm curious. I need to talk to her and see where her storefront is and all that stuff. She just opened it like 2 days ago. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, like when Farzad, you said in Europe, what you noticed, people don't like change. They're like the introduction of new things and like the entrepreneurial mindset. And this has come up before, talking about, was it Norway, Dave? Where entrepreneurial spirit there is different and the founders love the American sort of openness to like whatever. Like there's something, it's interesting, the longevity of companies, of countries, and when you're well financed, like there, I don't know, there's something here. I'm sort of,
Yeah, there's a difference in sort of
onto something.
scrappiness and competitiveness
Yeah.
and I mean, I've only spent a little bit of time there, but in talking to entrepreneurs who had spent time in the United States and particularly Silicon Valley or New York, um, the general tenor is significantly different. Like, oh, you're trying to grow a big company and you're rapidly doing it and like you're going nuts, balls to the wall in the thing. That's fine. That's a type of person
Acceptable. Yeah.
yeah. And then you're gonna go buy like some enormous house somewhere and like deck it all out in ridiculous shit. Like,
Also normal.
I was talking to somebody in Amsterdam and they're like, yeah, no, like, what are you going to do? Like, there's the small, medium, and large apartments. Like, pick one of those. Like, unless you're like ancient royalty or something like that, and you have one of the old wealth houses or something. So, and then people look at you askance for a little bit. I mean, again, this is chip on the shoulder entrepreneur types. So I don't know. This is a small data set for uh, anthropological research, but yeah, there was a definite difference in feel, but quality of life wise, there's an enormous difference in feel. Like, the sort of outdoor communal convivial culture in Amsterdam versus
Yeah.
San Francisco, like,
yeah.
you know, there is some of that there, but everybody is working so hard in San
Yeah.
Francisco, and they're all strung out with the thing and stressed, and every, you know, and every hangout you go to, people are half listening because they can't really be there, because they're thinking about a spreadsheet that they need to do tomorrow, you know. So yeah,
Or the conviviality is about the culture of work.
yeah.
So much conversation in San Francisco about work and who's IPOing, and like
Mhm.
it's so weird, and like who's taking money, like it's everywhere, and everyone's talking like about the newest buzzwords. You see like these
Yeah.
little like video compilations effectively of memes in San Francisco come through every now and then, and you're just like, yeah, that makes sense. It's just like a bunch of buzzwords and money, and everyone's just like, oh my god, have you heard? Because it feels like that. Like if you just go sit in a park, but then you also get the people who are dancing in the park, who know nothing about any of this, and they're just like,
Yeah.
this is a beautiful place, that's why I'm here.
Yep. I don't know. This is why I want to see more places.
Yep.
See what the balance is like. Like, with a, you know, a perspective where you can sort of look at the balance of it, because I find this fascinating. Like, what is the lifeblood of a place like that? Like,
Yep.
how does the economy work? How do the interpersonal relationships work? If there's a wealth disparity, like, how is that balanced? You know, what are the
Yep.
tensions like? You know, is it a livable thing? Is it a healthy thing? Or is it, you know, because there is a way to, I mean, up until pretty recently in human history, everybody was doing what you're talking about, like, what they're doing in Thailand. Like, you had to figure out how to make a living,
Yeah.
and you would go do things. Like, there are no jobs. Like, you know, maybe
Mm-hmm.
some the guilds and these kinds of things, but like the idea of a corporate job or a stable salary is an invention of the 20th century, effectively. You know, came out of like later capitalism. So for like corporate needs, and we're going back the other direction. Like, now in the United States, we're moving back towards, like, you pick up gigs all over the place, right? They're just mediated by these companies, and it's fucking terrible because you get the like sort of corporate structure and homogenization of jobs, but without the communal, like, being with each other
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
together kind of thing. And you're, you know, like, it's not a real open marketplace. Like,
No.
you know, you've got a game that is rigged by some app or something like this. It's algorithmically determining where you go and how you do it. So as far as pioneer territory, it's not so great. But, you know, taking that model and then like doing smaller scale local versions of these things might prove interesting. Like, you know, it's just, there's a lot of the the Ubers and the Airbnbs and stuff like this. They have so much like sway on
Yep.
those markets. You know, they're based on monopolizing the
Yep.
entire market, the entire ecosystem.
Yep.
And so you get these just mega corps. You know, not for me, but yeah. Anyhow,
Yeah. The silences are good.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I don't really want to pick that one up right now.
yeah. There's more fun things to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, what's the alternatives? What do you make?
Well,
What do
one
you
of the
play with?
things that comes up is how you decentralize something like that. And we're not really playing in an NFT or crypto space, but interested in that. How you decentralize something like short-term housing or car rides, like rideshare, because you do need to come together. So like a platform does that. So I'm just thinking, how do you decentralize something that needs centralized components? I'm sure there's people that have thought a lot about this, creating like a space where it's not moderated by a platform, but it's still a centralization of people at the time that they need XYZ. Like it's how do you find the people? How do you find the ride? How do you find the house? I'm curious about how that works.
Yeah,
It
there's a
would be
bunch of
nice to
models.
cut the middleman out. Like we were thinking about this when we're planning where we're going to stay and how we're going to find housing, and like how do you find decent price housing for short term that the prices aren't high because it's on Airbnb. And we found Furnished Finder is a company and website that's like Airbnb, but it's like really shitty software. And the
Crappier the better. I love it.
the houses are less like cookie cutter Airbnb. It's less like, it feels less like vacation rentals, and they're like the premier travel nursing like site, so travel nurses can come through, so it feels more home like, and it's longer term stays. So that's interesting, like you can find people that way. So, but you don't really need the platform to take a cut. Like if you just needed a place to advertise your space or find a tenant or find a host, like, yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
just Airbnb's prices there are crazy high. I'm like, what are you like? I get that. I mean, it took a lot for them to carve this thing out of, nothing, and to build the whole corporate structure and to build the environment within which you can go shop for a place to stay, just like you could a hotel. And I think that's what the prices are going to. This is the VC model. So someone subsidized it, and now it's coming back, and like for a month-long stay, it'll be $1,000 in fees to Airbnb for like a stay that's like less than $4,000. So they're taking 20%. Like, what are you doing? That doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. And then you hear stories all the time of people trying to get in touch with Airbnb and communicate with them, and they're not really available. So the model
at scale, you can't, it doesn't, that's not how that works. So
the money's not going towards the service side of it. The money's going towards paying probably the venture capitalists who funded this thing when it was super risky.
They're out.
They need return.
When they took it public, this is where they get their exit. Yeah, so now it's a gigantic publicly traded company, and then the purpose of the company, generally speaking, is to make money for shareholders.
Yep.
And so if you're not a shareholder, like the incentive structure is moving away from service with every single transaction, every single interaction.
That's interesting.
And it needs to be more and more fungible.
Yep. How does that work, the move from, like, when you exit after venture capital funding, at that point in time, all of the initial investors are paid off effectively? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of different ways that the deals work out, but
yeah,
they settle basically. So everyone's happy, in a succinct word. But I'm curious, like, I guess the question is there a different feeling of a once VC backed company that's gone public and another company that's gone public, as far as what the company dynamics are like and like their sort of mentality towards the business? That would be an interesting look.
I mean, I'm sure like there are trends with these things, and the style of growth and sell off and exit and all these other things go through phases. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a big topic, I guess.
Yep.
Actually, we could talk about it too, because I'm trying to put a model on rising enterprises, and we've been working on it for how long? It's been 1.5 months, almost 2 months. Wow. Just full time thinking about how to structure this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we can touch on it later too.
Yeah.
Other than that, personal wise, where are you guys? You guys staying in the one place, not moving around anymore?
Yeah, well, we're here for another week and a half, something like that. Then we're heading to LA for a month.
Nice.
And we're both going to go visit our families separately in Florida, in separate parts of Florida. I'm going to be in the redneck part of Florida, the hick part, and then she'll be in the fancy part.
West Palm Beach area for me.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. I haven't seen my family in a couple years now, I think. I saw my brother going going through Vegas. But oh no, I saw them right before they moved. No, maybe that was a couple years ago. We haven't all been together
Yeah,
in at
it's been a
least
while.
two and a
You
half,
haven't seen your
3 years.
grandma for a
No,
while. Yeah.
yeah. We got the the first of the vaccine thing yesterday, uh, and it's a it's a couple of things on that. One, it doesn't feel great. Like it sort of kicks your ass a little bit. And I was coming off of being sick, for like a week or so, so it's making me grumpy. But my arm hurts still. Kristen seems fine. She's doing yoga and jumping around and singing and things. But these are our dispositions. Uh,
Yeah,
but
but both
yeah,
of us, right after getting the vaccine, well, right after, there's something to do with eating and how it like, it's something with metabolism, I think. So if you're not feeling well, or like drugs do this too, any kind of drug, like whether it's illicit or like prescription over the counter, for me at least, if you eat after taking it, it kicks in when you eat. So the same thing happened with the vaccine. Dave ate earlier than I did, and then we had two calls, and I had one that he wasn't part of after that. So I was like 3 hours of video or audio call, and I felt fine, but he was feeling not good because after he
yeah,
ate, it sort of like laid him out. And then later I was like, holy shit, I need to eat. I just talked for like 3 hours, like, okay, so I ate like a big meal, and then after that it was like achy and like
yeah,
kind of chills and just tired, and I was just like, okay, so this is like the effects of the vaccine. But I feel fine this morning. I think, Dave, you're more or less back to normal, right?
yeah. I'm getting there. Like it's still kind of like achy or whatever. But yeah, the interesting part was like how they had it set up. Um,
Mm.
so they're processing just an enormous amount of people, and so there's like a racetrack in San Diego, like horse racing, and the big fairgrounds and stuff like this. So it's a large area, and they have it all set up for traffic management. And so it's all it's a driving culture in Southern California. So everybody just drives there, and then they put you through this crazy maze. Then it took half an hour to get through it, and you're moving the whole time.
It's
Like,
kind of fun.
uh,
It's like
yeah.
a theme park or something. Like it's like you're like on a ride in your car. It's not, I mean, it's not
The
really fun.
least fun theme park you've ever been to,
It's interesting
where
though,
you
like
get a shot at the end of the theme.
in your
Fun.
car. So I was
Yep.
talking to a friend who's Chinese, lives in Canada now, and she's like, of course, America would do a McDonald's drive-through version of vaccine
Yeah.
shots. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
you roll
like
down
that.
your window and the nurse goes through the window and she sticks you. And they give you a card, and then you have to like sit in a parking lot for 15 minutes to make sure you don't pass out. And everything is like ordered, and it's crazy. It's like being a cow. Uh,
They put a timer in a plastic bag and then put it on the windshield, so you have to sit for 15 minutes, and people come check like, how you doing? And like everyone's just hanging out in their cars, and like everyone's like, I'm fine. Like, but they're
so
not even
weird.
really listening. When we left, they do like a last check before they grab the timer, and how you doing? And Dave said awesome or amazing, and he's
No,
just
I'm like,
like,
I'm doing amazing. And he's like, okay, everything is fine. And then
he's
moving
like,
on.
all right,
It's
have
like,
a
all
good
right,
day.
man. But yeah, we were talking to the nurse, and she said that alone, she is doing 5,000 a day by herself. And there's just
Wait,
station after
just
station.
her?
Yes,
Oh, are you sure?
it's not. They're not doing 5,000 total at that place. There were 5,000 cars when we were there. Like,
Oh my
she is
gosh.
just, they're just cranking them through. It is nuts. So, or
Yeah, they
5,000 a
called
week,
it,
maybe.
no, it was a day. I remember the day
Yeah.
part. She said, or she didn't say, they called it a super station. There's like all
Yeah.
these signs up, like you're going to like a show or something, and it's like Pfizer is not available. You're just
Oh,
like,
it's so
okay.
weird.
It's like
Like now
we're
offering
actually living in a
Moderna.
simulation. Yeah.
It's so fucking weird. Yeah. Anyhow, so
It felt
we're
good
done
to
with
get
that.
the vaccine, the first one at least. Yeah.
There are two, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got one that has two. But you're apparently 2 weeks after this, which I wanted to get it before traveling to Florida, even though my family is vaccinated, just traveling. I haven't been on a plane actually.
Yep.
And then going to see my grandma. I mean, again, she's vaccinated, but it's just better to be safe. So you get 80%, I guess, immunity theoretically after the first shot, after 2 weeks. So I don't know, feels good. You're supposed to, like, there's memes going around on the internet now where people are like, are you still wearing your mask though? And people are like, I'm wearing double masks until the CDC tells me not to. And you're just like, okay, like, relax.
Yeah, double mask is a US only thing.
Oh, really?
I mean, you gotta do everything extra. You gotta show your allegiance to anti-COVID. So it's fine. I don't know, whatever makes you comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if Sweden goes double mask now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they're so deep in it. There is
Yeah.
no way of controlling it now. Just
Mm.
hundreds, thousands of people getting it. And I think the death
Really?
rate, yeah, it's 100 something a day.
So they're not handling it well, is what you're saying?
Worst of the
Interesting.
entire Europe.
Yeah.
Really?
They tried a bunch of stuff early on, like they wanted to get to herd immunity. I remember hearing some stories there. Yeah, I mean, this is how it goes. Every place is an experiment, and some of the experiments aren't going to work. So, yeah, I don't know. Like the U.S., it was like pretty, mostly because the information landscape is so fucked. Like you can't get decent information from anybody, and nobody trusts the institutions anymore, right? Because there's all these conflicting stories and whatever else. But the rollout of the vaccines has been, for whatever reason, we're good at this. Like, just create something at scale and then move people's bodies through it, and then offer a product. We can do that.
Yeah, there's a market-driven aspect of this,
Yeah.
and I think intersects with the common good. So it's like a nice win-win. And I don't know enough about like the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, there is market-driven things there, but I think it's more of, if we get everybody, quote, back to normal, then we can get the consumers back into the world. They'll be shopping and they'll be visiting places. So I think that's the mindset. And Americans are like, yeah, we're here for that. Like, get us back out there. We don't care how it happens.
Get everybody to Chipotle so that the economy can be stable.
Well,
anyhow.
Yeah, it's interesting. Google has like a COVID case, like you can look at different countries, and it is interesting to see there's totally different patterns in different places.
Very. And Sweden is a country where people are not so close to each other. Houses are not so close to each other. It's a there's another way of living there. And it's on average, the number of new cases are about 15,000 a day. And death rate, I mean, 40 a day. And he goes, Sweden, according to The Guardian, Sweden has highest new COVID cases per person in Europe. And this is after Spain's mayhem.
Yeah.
And still Sweden, like, wear a mask, don't wear it, whatever, up to you. Places, be careful or not, everything is still open. Check your fever or not. It's so much that we trust our people. Our people are adults and we treat them like adults. It's their decision and they know how to do it. We advise them to be careful. That doesn't work. That never worked.
Oh yeah, Thailand is seeing a spike right now.
Yeah.
Interesting. Portugal is like a hub right now for international not tourist nomads. Like there's a specific visa program that makes it easy.
Yeah, we talked about it last time.
Live there. And I've seen people on Twitter talking about how strict they are with COVID lockdown, and their cases are pretty low. Like they're not having a spike at all. I don't know. This is fun. You can look at different people or different countries, different policies, different. Yeah. I wonder how long.
Just your idea of a theme park.
I like operations and systems.
Yep.
Well, So what I'm thinking about is like the like concept of a global society and how far we are from that really happening again, where people are moving more freely. It's
Yeah.
probably a bit of a ways off, because if every country is doing their own thing, because I mean, you have to do this at a smaller scale. There's no way we could coordinate this globally. We're too far off from that. So different countries are going to be more or less open to visitors and travel and like all of that. So that should be interesting over the next like 6 months here.
If you get a peek at behind the scenes, like how governments are run or how
Yeah.
hospitals are,
Yeah.
it doesn't look good.
No,
There are no
never does.
connections to hospitals. Like Three Jobs is that's one of the benefits of running an agency. On the, Three Jobs get the kind of the opportunity to talk to, especially since we kind of specialize with working only with large organizations. Those are the ones that tend to reach out nowadays. And one project that we are discussing now is they're building software for hospitals to upload their guidelines for different things, right? So doctors tend to advise or prescribe people medications based on a gut feeling and experience. What did I do last time, and I
Yeah.
do the same thing this time. But very simple things for hospitals to get aligned on. These are the guidelines. This is how things should be run. And there needs to be some type of a connection between hospitals just to share some information.
Yeah.
I mean, you learned that with the COVID passport. We tried to do it in Thailand with the government here. It's each country have at least a couple of version of it.
Yep.
And each hospital are using some of them. And everything it's so misaligned at every step of the way, which is this entire COVID, the only thing that it teaches us is how much government needs tech and how much the healthcare industry needs it.
Yeah. It's communication stuff like at scale, which technology can facilitate, and they're not good at it. It's really bad. And the misinformation that gets out then, and miscommunication, and then you're sitting around with a group of friends sitting around probably through Zoom right now and comparing notes, and everyone has a different thing. How you're just like any normal person, or even people that are intelligent, they're just like, I don't like, what do you make of this? I don't know. There's no way to make sense, because the information, it's garbage in, garbage out thing. You're just like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this person says one thing, I've experienced another thing. I talked to my mom earlier, she said something, and none of it, like, it's not triangulating. Usually with sense making, like, with the three of us can do it with most topics. With the COVID stuff, no, it's just like, you can't. And then you get the feeling that you can't trust any of the information sources, because like, how none of it makes sense.
Yeah, and you'll fall back on sort of superstitious thinking or
or
gut
outdated.
instinct. And, when you have a bunch of people thinking from their guts are very smart at certain things, but not very smart at larger scale, like observation of objects that are larger than the individual.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you can't sense out into that. Like, you don't have
no.
sensor. You could have sensors through technology if the information was good and you had the sensors out, but we don't have that pipeline. So you can't, like, your gut instinct based on a bunch of mumbo jumbo from people.
Well, so in addition to the software, which can collapse and constrain problem areas so that you can take a look at a snapshot of the world, you also need like training or some sort of educational like something to understand what you're looking at and how to look at it, and like what is good information and what is soured information, and how you can determine these things. Developing skill sets in these areas, like, and doing this collaboratively, like where you can test this stuff. Groups that can do this, organizations that can do this, that can move their way through information rapidly. And I mean, Amazon is phenomenal at this, right? They are just constantly communicating internally. They value high quality, like clear thinking because if you don't have this, you can't create these supply chains. You can't like collapse distances. Like, there's a sort of value in this. There's a few other organizations that do this, like that Ray Dalio, his hedge fund, like they have
Yeah.
that like radical honesty mentality. That doesn't work for a lot of, I mean, they're very analytical at this place.
Yep.
But these kinds of like encultured like sense making, right? Like we are a type of people that come together and do these practices to try and understand reality, not what we feel is right or what we believe as a culture should be right, but what is happening, right? But yeah, this is something that most people don't do naturally because they haven't been in an environment where it's been necessary. I don't know, like I'm curious to find more places that they're doing this well.
Yeah,
It seems in very short supply.
and how are they doing what they're doing, and what are they doing? So
Yeah.
like there's some amount of, we've talked a bit about this, Dave, like there's like the technical know-how of being able to set up these pipelines, these like for channels of
Yeah.
information, right? And it seems like with Amazon and what is Ray Dalio's firm called? I forget. Ray Dalio's, he's not even there anymore.
Bridgewater, but something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
They're focused, right? There's like a focused like
Yeah.
effort on, okay, we're going to work in this space. Like Amazon is
Yeah.
a good example because they started small. We're going to work with books, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to feel into, like you're saying, what the reality is of current flows of information, what's going on, and then we're going to build channels so that we can capture like the value of that flow.
Yeah.
But how do you scale that? Like that's what's interesting. How do you create a culture of people layered on top of that can, yeah, I mean, you have to orient people to that.
Yeah. People are doing the sensing of that. And if they are oriented in a certain way with a skill set that is aligned with this, like, there's all these, they have these things where like you hire up, like,
Yeah.
you're not trying, the hierarchy is sort of inverse. You're trying to hire the smartest person to work with,
Yep.
right? These kinds of things. They have this memo culture where
Yep.
everything is written and communicated this way. And so these little things, and then you are aligned in purpose towards some degree. That I haven't seen on the inside, but clearly it works for
Clearly
the type of thing that they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's
so
an alignment of person, people with system, which you don't see often.
Well, they are the same thing. Like, having a system that doesn't take into account people, or what is the point of the system? Like it's just a big container. Yeah, so the system needs to be operated. It needs to be moving. It needs to be, the tooling of the system and the flow of the system needs to be in alignment with the type of people that are moving through it. Like the people are enacting the system. And if on the lower end though, like, where you get these warehouses and stuff at the ass end of Amazon, those people are not people.
So much.
They're not persons. They are interacting directly with the system. And when something that large, like people fall through the cracks and like they're overheating and stuff like this because they're being treated like robots. So there are balances here, right? Like, how do you get, again, they're operating at such an enormous scale, like, bring it down. This kind of comes into what we were talking, Kristen and I were talking about, like compensation and incentive stuff and all these things, and the type of organization like that would produce individuals like with a fair amount of agency who are creative and can the thing that Sweden is trying to do with they can be adults in the system, but still with guidance and constraints and stuff that are oriented towards some purpose, right? Some mission, this is, and so, yeah, we started talking about like Wayward is basically the overarching ethos, like the place where that is like trickled out through the network rather than down necessarily, right? Because the more that you can have a peer sort of centric model for this kind of thing, the more that you can develop these patterns of operation and like knowledge share across your subsidiaries or whatever. Anyway, so that leads into this, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah, like there's layers of um, systems that can be pure or like concentric, but like
Yeah,
with Wayward, you've got like Wayward and then whichever company we're talking about, and then the individual that
yeah,
is working within the company. So, and that individual has their own sort of system of being that should be taken into account. So it's designed in like whatever the incentive package is designed in alignment with whatever Three Drops is doing, and then
yeah,
whatever Wayward is doing. So you're getting this like continuity through person to company to parent company or whatever it is. Yeah, and then how you get to that point. So this is hard because it's customized. Like it has to be based on the individual. So you need, especially for executives, like they should have a role in determining what their compensation is and giving them the responsibility, not like the privilege, but the responsibility of deciding how they see themselves driving towards these shared goals that the company has set forth in a way
Mm.
that's motivating for them. Because otherwise, I mean, oftentimes we were talking about this too, you see with companies, they talk about the work in a way that feels separate from the person on paper. So like you get
yeah,
incentivized for something and it's all about the money.
yeah,
And like Farzad, one of the things that you mentioned last time was you don't have to, like your numbers don't have to be geared towards financial growth or just the size of the company in some way or shape or form, but it has to be geared towards growth.
yeah.
So that opens up a whole area of conversation, like what is growth, what is Wayward Group driving towards, and how does Three Drops fit into that, and then how do you situate William inside of that with
Hmm.
his input.
Mm. I mean, just hiring a CEO was something that I was hoping to get done in at least the last 4 years. As soon as I noticed I'm not suitable for it.
Sure.
And right after that, I kept thinking about what is given that how Three Drops has been operated accidentally all of these years, is very open-ended. Like every time I talk about this, people are it seems like it's very new to people. That wasn't something that I thought too much about in the beginning. It just that
Yeah,
was the only way for us to operate. We don't track hours. We don't do most things that other agencies are doing.
yeah,
We don't bill like they are billing,
Mhm.
and we don't work internally like they are. Like none of the people now, especially that none of us are in Stockholm, are actually hired to Three Drops. Everybody have their own companies and they are hired full time, and then they send us their invoices, and it works really really well. We can hire from anywhere. People that we hire have an experience of freelancing in the past. They understand the remote, they understand the communication, and then the kind of the loneliness that come with being remote and how to
Mhm.
solve it. But then um I also, at the beginning, I was like, all right, the whole thing, that the entire motivation for this and going through all of this pain of starting a company and keeping it alive when things are horrible is that it's an asset. You have it. It's a
Mhm.
thing on
Mhm.
your name. In this case, it's not on my name.
Mhm.
Um, that's a whole another story, which caused so much roller coaster in the past
yeah.
5 days. Which I'm
Oh
happy
yeah.
to talk to. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
just I can I can easily, tear up in seconds.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
but with that, I've been trying to kind of come up with a model that enables really good people to clone Three Drops, keep the brand, start the company in wherever they are,
Yeah,
if they have
Cool.
um if there is a place where there are a lot of talents there, like with
yep,
Three Drops is designers. Um, and that's been on top of my mind to just get away from the proper way of doing this thing and experiment with that part of the work and then see what happens.
Yep.
I've been known for, I've never taken investment for any of the things that we've done. I've always turned down on acquisition offers for agencies, especially from the agency mafias. There are so many in everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then now I can see that it's not that fruitful to work for a company, regardless of your salary. And, 5 years later, 8 years later, what do you have to show for?
Yep.
Yep.
It's a life, it's gonna pass. And if you are putting that much stress and you need to deal with, you are putting that much of your life into it and you're dealing with so much stress, especially as a CEO,
Yep.
you need to own it. I just want a model that works in a sense that I'm able to, people are very like-minded people, are able to clone if they see themselves aligned with how 3Drops is run and how people that work there are kind of a little bit of rebels or outsiders or whatever you may call it. People are born in a country, living in another country. They are adaptive. They are very open-minded and seek opportunities. And once they arise, they kind of commit to them. That type of mentality. Clone it. You have a very, very, very good salary, but there needs to be. And then from the other side, I need to, keep myself safe for errors. So if somebody doesn't turn out as well as I was hoping for, I don't have too much problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's part of the design of culture, the constraints on that will attract people who are more likely to succeed in the culture that you're creating, right?
Mm.
So like this is like sort of design principles that are upstream of the actual like people that you're choosing, because if they are entering into a game and they have a personality type in which they'll successfully play this game, they are more likely to succeed. And if the game is legible to them, right? Like, and part of the design of these things is adding in certain like gameplay styles. I'm just using games because they're active and interactive. That like, so say for instance, we're talking about like, your sort of your higher end operators in these games. So like you have this model where you can fork 3Drops and then embed it in an environment that has like local differences, and then an operator can then take that model. It's it's what is it called? It doesn't matter. And they can sort of use their natural abilities and embed it in the place, their understanding of the local population or their client base, to build out on top of this infrastructure. But they're still able to communicate across the rest of the 3Drops instances, right? Like, so you can do knowledge share. And then part of that game though is choosing people who can design like their own game, right? Like who are willing to go through the process of setting for themselves constraints and then having accountability across the network and to you, right? So that they are driving themselves towards some healthy orientation of growth, right? Because if they can grow into this thing, the instance that they are running will grow, and the people that they're choosing will also have this sort of mentality, right? Which means that they can go start other ones, right? This is like, so this is designing the gameplay is super important in culture, because all of the other like incentives, like you can make a lot of money. Yeah, you can make a lot of money. What happens when you do? What happens when you have all the money? Like, what does the game look like then? And are you a person that can adapt to that and not get lost in buying mansions and other dumb shit that don't matter, right? Because like when you are in really good shape, when you are a person for whom like this stuff is fun, like the challenge and the working with peers, like being able to test your skills against other people, is so much more important than collecting more money. The money is just fluid to help you do all of that stuff, right? So how do you engender? But on the lower end, as people are coming up, the younger folks, the people who want to make their name, or however you want to look at that, they still need, you know, appropriate like challenges and ways to succeed and ways to grow. So I don't know, this is how I've been sort of thinking about this, and like giving agency to the person, like in your executives, like to design a path for themselves in collaboration with the skilled people around them, to be like, all right, well, I want to hit $1 million a year in revenue. Okay, why? How are you going to do that? What in you is blocking you from doing that? Do you believe you can't do it? Is that too big a number? Like, how can you play with this structure so that you are more likely to succeed? Are you overshooting it right now? Do you need to just focus on making you know, whatever amount, or are you undershooting it because like you're afraid that you know, you don't have the grounding and the people around you to really to you know, make $100 million or whatever the hell it is, right? And that's just a number, right? What are the other aspects in your life that you are trying to build out? How is your family life? How is the relationships? How are you managing those things? What is your spiritual grounding like? If you get massively stressed, are you going to blow up because you don't have that stuff? You don't have stability in your life there, right? Like, because that's where your liabilities show up. Because the operators can make money, but how are they making money? Like, how are they like producing good? Anyways, so I start ranting.
No, that the last part, um, how your relationships look like, because
Mm-hmm.
that keeps you grounded when things are very stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the liability grounds. That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a thing here where this is the role of wayward group, is creating the community or the context. Like, it's literally a holding group, right? It
Yeah.
can hold space for the different factions of 3-drops that can pop up, and there's one right now.
Yeah.
So you focus on the one. And what's also nice here, so there's a fractal, in the sense that what you experienced, Farzad, in growing 3-drops, and you went through this. You did it alone, though. You had an experience where you wanted to bring something into the world. You wanted to run it in such a way. You had goals. You had to figure out what blockers were, what was going to work. You did it in different locations, like doing
Yeah.
all of that. Now other people can come in and do it in their own way, but like with a similar like experience. So it's repeated, where someone else comes in with their own goals, but it's going to align with this larger vision which you are providing for people through wayward group. So it's like you're
Yeah.
graduating now to this like bigger picture thing that holds space for other people to do this and guidance for them to do this, which is cool. So like, you know how to do it because you've done it, and now it's helping other people to figure out how they can go through it. But you can rely on the experience and knowledge that you've gained in the process, which is cool. Like, they're not doing it alone anymore like you did. Not that you did it alone, you had people around, but you went through, like, you have the unique experience of like, I built it from the ground up. Like, part of the challenge then becomes, well, what if someone wants to turn it into something that differs from what you were doing? So things will come up where you'll be like, I don't know about that. But if it, again, wayward group, if it's holding, you know, this sort of like constraints or like context, like, oh yeah, we're not going to do it quite like that, like where you have to stay inside these bounds. Like, I think
Yeah.
that there's flexibility there, but I think you can set boundaries for what you want people to play within, and then there's all kinds of tools and support that come with that if you play within the boundaries. I mean, the model makes sense. Like, there's this is doable.
I think constraints are, I'm personally addicted to it because I was put into it. And I figured out a way of, it narrows your focus so much that you do
Yep.
really well
Yep.
on areas that you have permission to do things with.
Yeah.
And I just love to apply it everywhere in all organizations. Like with 3Drops, there is a ongoing conversations that we should go after startups. They are so easy to win over,
Yeah.
but there is no future in it.
Yep.
Yep.
So we keep pulling ourselves away from them unless they are outside of the tech,
Yeah. Yeah.
world. You are building a solution that is not for your peers. You're building a solution for hospitals. You're building a
Yep.
solution for insurance companies. It's
Something
outside.
fundamental. Yeah.
Yeah. Then yes. So those constraints, I think, are healthy to narrow down the focus, because people, especially that are suitable for CEOs, that are so visionary and so open.
Yep.
That's
Give them
how
a
they,
play.
yeah.
Give them a
So you need
space
to
to
kind
play
of,
within. Yep.
yeah.
And then go as broad as you want within that scope. Like, you need it. Otherwise, yeah. I mean, I run into this. If I don't have any constraints, I get overwhelmed because anything's possible, right? So focus in this
Yeah.
area and then open your mind. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
easier.
It's balancing abundance and scarcity. So like if you have abundance of information, then you need better curation.
Yeah.
If you have
Yeah.
a scarcity of information, then you need to, there are these sort of natural flows. And when you have somebody who is extremely good at moving laterally through information, and like a CEO type who can go spot opportunity across anything, go drop them in somewhere, and they're like, okay, this is how that works. Then it becomes more about figuring out how to orient them to a place that they can do this with the least amount of effort possible, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that means aligning them with something that is like centering on something that looks like their purpose or calling or direction, right? Something that for which they have like a lot of fuel, natural fuel, by the nature of growing up the way they did and being in the situations they are. And they may not know what this is yet, but part of the growth process here is moving them towards these things. Because when you have somebody who is extremely energetic and open and stuff, and then they get into a vein of something that they understand, the confidence comes online, the centeredness comes online, and they make it look easy, right? Then it's about like not blowing that up, because your brain will be like, there's other things, and there's, so having like a system and peers to be able to talk about this stuff, so that you can continuously like get into the style of cycle that makes sense for the type of production and growth that you're looking to build. And so this is where like coming up with a system of design for elegant constraints, like there is a way, a meta practice of designing constraints. This is where once you get into like, as you come up as a designer, you're figuring out just how to do anything, right? And then you have a sense that there is a better or worse way to do things. And then that sense opens up into, oh, there is a pattern in the choosing of better and worse ways to do things. And then that opens, and then you can start designing with those patterns to give people, and then you tell people this is kind of how it works. They may not be able to understand it yet, but they can start like, oh, you can do this as well. There is an intentionality in the way that you can design these things. Like, know that if you offer yourself a constraint in this way, and it is an active thing that like, it's pulling you, you're going to get, anyways. Yeah. I need to write all this down.
It
it's
sounds
disperse.
like what you kind of need now is a protocol for wayward group, for elegant design of constraints. So then any, like, you can use it when talking to onboarding a new CEO, like, okay, here's how, like, here's what we're playing within, here's how we do things here. Basically, you have to make it up. So now that's what, that's what you're going to do with William. And you get to go through the experience of the transition of leadership too, and what that looks like,
Yep.
which is a good time, like, because there's so much information that happens there, and lots of things come up where, like you talked about, I'll feel better probably once he lands like 2 clients or whatever it was that you said.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that pop up then where you could be like, okay, why do I care about that? There's information here aside from just the 2 clients. What is it about the 2 clients? Is it that there's money? Like, what information do you get from that? So yeah, this period of time, you can start building that playbook, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the whole reason I kind of need to keep reminding myself of it. The whole reason that I'm doing this and why I'm approaching it like this and being so open for a new form of doing it is how I, in the beginning, approached designers. So I knew what designers liked or wanted in terms of work freedom,
Yep.
That's great.
things they like to do, and then you offer them that.
Yep.
And sometimes to kind of get the best talents, you kind of work with them to kind of become part of their life without changing it too much. Um, there are a few people that I've always wanted to bring to 3Drops, and the only thing that it blocks me is that they also want to have stake in it.
Yep.
And I 100% believe once they are onboarded, they will do amazing because they've done it in the past, right? Like, and you kind of hit these blockers sometimes in life where why does it matter that I own 100% of this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It means nothing if I'm.
What are you gonna do with it?
Yeah.
So I should start giving it away, but doesn't mean that what I built so far in 11 years now, would people appreciate the at which stage they got onboarded to this thing? Because there are kind of no challenges now. There is a brand name, there is kind of a reputation, there is a portfolio to support the work that we've done. And there are frameworks in place. Agencies are very easy to duplicate. Once you have your process and your way of working, and the way that you work is kind of unique because of the results that the agency's been getting with some unique projects, right? Easy to duplicate. It's not a rocket science. We know how to work with designers. We understand products. We understand founders. We understand big projects with, dozens, sometimes hundreds of stakeholders. 100. So somebody who have a good experience would be able to come in, get a stake of the company, and have a very comfortable salary. And then, that's the only way for 3Drops to kind of blow up. Shared CEOs. Each, I'm thinking, these are just dreams, but I would love a person that I know in Canada to come on, and one in Stockholm.
So,
and it's not,
is the idea then that there's one 3Drops, or that could be multiple 3Drops?
One. They're just different offices run by different people. They're sharing the same processes. They're sharing the same team. They're just growing in it.
Yep.
I'm thinking, is it sell biz dev people in different locations? It's really not, because biz dev is just a portion of the work. CEOs have a very broad understanding of from getting a lead into execution and delivery and building that relationship and getting more things like it. So I don't know, it's not sales. I would like it to be like different CEOs for different locations, I don't think one person can run a company. I just don't believe in that mindset anymore. I don't think one CEO is the right approach. I think
No.
a few that are running a company together is good. And I think
Yep.
they need to look into each other eye to eye. If the role is one person is CEO, the others are managers, the CEO still leads. And but then if you have three people kind of very like-minded, which is why I tried to practice it a couple of years ago when Three Drops was growing a lot. We were,
Mhm.
I don't know, 21 people at one point, and we had two managers, one client manager and one just internal manager, and they looked eye to eye to each other, and then just them together, they ran things as soon as they got along. These people usually people that they have such a way of doing things, and it's very hard for them to get along, but you give
Yep.
them kind of a principles, are these are the core things, these are the core rules of this game. If we are
Yep.
aligned on this, collaboration will happen, but you
Yep.
need to commit to this bare minimum. And we have a
Yeah.
Yep.
very like three, four things you need to agree on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, I mean, the conversations that happen during the meetings become so sophisticated.
Yeah.
And that's how kind of I value companies. Put three, four people from the leadership into a meeting, see what type of things they discuss. Usually they are so underwhelming. Topics that they're talking about, things that they
Yeah.
are
There's
finding
no depth.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no, that's what I'm thinking Three Just would be amazing with. Um, it would be William, it would be one more, two more, and we are good. Three people are running it, true to the name.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. There's
Each
a.
person is a drop. You have three drops.
I am one drop. I'm two drop. I'm three drop. There's something here too. What I'm like feeling into is there's like developmental levels, like growth. So you've sort of maxed out on your experience as it stands in three drops now, but there's enough value in the thing that you don't want to put it down and walk away from it.
Yeah.
So you're growing into a new role, which is to facilitate other people to grow into a role that you once occupied. And you're changing it a little bit so that there'd be more growth potential and multiple CEOs, broader geographic reach, right? So it's changing the model a little bit, but yeah, you're giving yourself room to grow into something new, and then other people to grow into and help build as they grow, which is cool. Like this feels
This
good.
is this is a point of abundance, right? So you're at a place where this is relatively easy. Like, you can build one of these things. You have a lot of resource, right? And getting to this place is hard. But once you're here, one of the arts that you have to learn is how to be generous in a way that is fruitful. Like,
yeah,
being able to, uh like, because if you just give it away, it fucks people up, and like they don't know what to do with it, and so there are ways to be generous, and like sensible ways to do this, like you are offering something more than just riches and money and all these other things. You're offering opportunity, and you have to be involved with that, though. Like, and it's mutual. Like, the ability to teach this stuff and grow with the people that you're offering the opportunity is enlivening you, right? So there is a commitment there, a mutual commitment, that like, yeah, I don't know, but there's an art to this. This is why these transitions, in a lot of cases in companies, they it is really, really hard to transition things out, because the founder's ego gets in the way, and they want it to be like what they did. And but the entire landscape has changed in the time that you have built this thing, which means that this is why you're creating these sort of core principles. Like, that these things are true to the extent that they are base level logic, right? And then you need adaptability, which the type of people that you're choosing for have these adaptable mindsets, so that they can reorient to the landscape as it stands now. because you need to be constantly sensing into the like how things are changing subtly. And if you're not on the ground anymore, like directly sensing this, like you are teaching them how to do their own sensing, and then they in turn can, in the conversations, can figure out what the world actually looks like. There's this aspect to it. Plus you get to continuously stay in touch with how things
Yeah.
are, with it, without having to go in there and like dig ditches yourself, because
This
that's not,
is,
yeah, that's not where you're best suited anymore, right? There are other bigger things, and then
well,
you
you've
can
grown
teach
out
those
of that.
things. Yeah, yeah.
You can do that. Why you're not going to keep doing that? That's not your personality. Like you figured
Hmm.
out how to do it. So okay, let's move on. Like let's grow the thing. Let's grow self bigger. It's what we were talking about with building channels and sensors of information.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you can have other people doing that and there's like high fidelity of how that information is transmitted throughout the system, you don't have to be doing the day to day. You can get this information into the world, and then whatever you choose to do with that, that's where you get a bunch of opportunity. That's what Wayward Group is. It's sort of
yeah,
this entity that helps facilitate, I think, the transmission of this information, the building of the channels, taking
yeah,
care of the people, making sure that's working, so that you're getting these like emergent like insights out of what it is like to work in this way, and then you can repurpose them wherever they need to go. It could be back into that company, it could go into another company, because you've got a few different things going. But
yep,
that's the cool part. You can reap benefits, all of the different things, and then sort of, yeah.
I think also, with products, and I keep going back and forth, in my mind on this. I think product companies are more suitable to have one CEO, because usually there is one perhaps right way of doing things. With agencies, there could be more. There are more. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so
They're
it's
more of a
not,
people business, yeah. In
yeah.
that relational, yeah,
So
yeah,
one is one way, the other way. They are both right. Like I've been approaching 3 jobs from my limitation of personality, advances and disadvantages perhaps, and then it's built in a way that it's been in the past 11 years. But somebody else approaches completely differently, then they grow it in another direction, and that's fine too. That's
yeah,
a different type of projects and mentality, but then this person can do it too. And I think there would be I don't think agencies should have a CEO. I think they just should have a board of kind of directors. And I think the thing that I always admire with Bakken and Beck, I had a call with you one to kind of understand a little bit more about how they did it, because it, from my point of view, it was very, very unique.
hmm,
Each person that they really wanted to get on board, and they weren't so keen into relocating, then they go, all right, oh, let's just build a team around you,
yep,
in wherever you are, and you get the office and you hire people and you build a team. Wonderful. That's so de-stressing.
yeah,
You and it's, to their right, it's amazing people. um but what an amazing thing it would be if 3 people are equally running a company, and they all could be right. What an experiment that would be. It's
yeah,
not, yeah.
It takes a lot of maturity, I think, to
yep,
step back. Like what you're doing right now, a lot of people can't do, because they're
no,
so disillusioned with their ego, basically,
yeah,
that my way is the right way. Yeah, well, I'm just reflecting back to like what you're doing right now is interesting. It is not typical that what you see and hear in the business world. I think that this I get excited. Like it feels good. Because what the biggest thing, I keep saying it over and over again, is there's growth. There's room to grow for everyone in the system. If you,
yep,
as a leader, don't try to hold it all, or it has to be your way. You're helping design a system So there is some, I mean, your stamp is on it because you can hold space for people to now grow
Yep.
on their own, which, yeah, I mean, you had to build that network yourself to get the space and room to grow. And now you get to give it back to other people. And I mean, the value in that is huge too, because of your experience on the ground. So this is cool.
I think two is the kind of a, because even though I wanted to do this for such a long time, my personality and my identity was so wrapped up in this thing, because other than that, I really have nothing. Like, I don't have a country, I don't have
Sure.
ownership over anything in my life. I still struggle with that. And I'm like, this is my last thing that I need to hold it. This is all I've done it for. At least I can have this. Turn out this is also nothing. And what a great thing it is when you kind of open it up and you become, because the stress that comes with it, especially with the instability with my personal life, and this thing is also completely attached to me, and it feels like a another responsibility that I need to carry on. And it's like, why? And then the second thing is, outside of the identity thing, once you start working with much bigger companies, like when you are still working with companies around your size, or perhaps third time bigger your size, the company have 150,000 employees, you're still like, all right, so maybe I can do better, maybe I can reach this at this stage, at this kind of sophisticated organization. But then once you start working with enterprises, you go, this is a broken model. Like one CEO, just one way.
Yeah.
There are
You can
layers,
see it.
all broken.
Yep.
And you look at them, and then you start looking at yourself, and like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I've been brainwashed of doing business in this way because it's structured this way. It needs to break free. And agencies are so flexible that you can do these things with. And then now actually OFC too, like you think, with OFC, because there are three products, one not early, early stage. We doing the, what is it, the second version or the third version of the product. We're gonna crowdfund for Slim, and then Sincere is just a side thing. With this thing, it's just a very fun, it needs to be a very fun studio, and perhaps some cool things will come out of it, so everybody gets a stake into, because they have it with much bigger companies. I was a first employee at Twitter or Pinterest, and the benefits of those are just crazy if the company goes IPO. But there is a chance for small companies to offer that much of success to the people that are hired in a small group of, and then startup studios are usually very small. And then with rising enterprises, this enterprise facing startup studio that we are making up, is just so interesting, because as soon as you start researching the landscape of all of these startup studios, how they've raised the fund, how successful they are, there are just so many chances of doing things very differently to make it worthwhile and fun.
It's scaling depth. We keep bringing this up, like building larger organization, larger collaboration, but maintaining depth. Because if your depth is disappearing, then the thing gets watered down, and the fun goes away, and then it's bureaucratic, right? So, but scaling depth is hard, because every new complexity that you add to it, the communication can get watered down. So to scale depth, you need to move towards agency, like literal, like in the sovereignty sense, like the individual has agency. Like think about the term agency and its multiple meanings. Agency is flexible because it has agency in the world to make the right decision, right? So like this is why it's such a good model. The other thing that I was thinking about when you talk about like the insecurity of the path that you've had to lead, where you have had to build things without a home base, this is such a strength now. It is such a strength because like the world is being like torn up, and home is changing, and location and place and like borders and all of these things are starting to be up for grabs, because on the internet that doesn't exist at all. And the technology of the time, it will lead how people live their lives, right? So you were forced into this early on and have had to figure it out without any map. But this is, and it's painful, and you have learned how to deal with the grief and the pain and the hardship of this. This is what wisdom is. But you have figured out a way to do this gracefully. And now you can give this to other people, because more people are going to live. The world is moving in this direction. You just got
Yep.
chucked into it early, right? So now if you can take that grief and pain and turn it into opportunity, turn it into a positive. Yeah, you don't own anything. That's fucking great. Like, you own the relationships with people who can operate in this way, who can be adaptable and can be flexible in strength, right? Like, so the rewards from being able to facilitate this thing for other people are enormous, right? Like, Kristen and I are moving in this direction because I can sense this is how the world goes, right? Like, buying a big house, locking it down, and building a fucking fence around it is death. It's crazy to me. Like, being able to move through things, being able to sense opportunity and work with people, having the wealth be in your relationship with peers and wherever they are or however they are, and being able to orient to that is the smartest thing that you can do. You've just been doing it because you had to, which means that your level of depth in that area is, it surpasses a lot of people. So now it's about like helping other people understand what you have done, right? And how you have done it and how you've been successful in this mindset, because it is a style of being that a lot more people are going to have to engage in, like whether they want to or not. But if you can grab that thing like in a positive mindset, you can see it as opportunity, then you get all this crazy, like this opening. Like, look at how the world can be if you're not stuck in a single place having to own the whole fucking thing. Like, sharing ownership gives you the ability to move towards where your identity needs to go next, right? So yeah.
It would solve the biggest challenge in my whole life, which is I cannot own a fucking company anywhere. It's
Yeah.
insane to me that this is true. Like, there is no I've tried
I know.
so much. I spent 6 years trying every single lawyer, every single country. Can I start my company? The biggest challenge that I have now is there is a passport issue. Iran is one of the most flagged passports
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
So it's not a sophisticated one when it comes to, hey, I want to open a new company in your country.
Yeah.
But then there is an identity thing too, like not I'm 31. Last time I was in Iran was 13. I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I started 3 jobs when I was 20, perhaps earlier. 18. I started with my cousin. It was called Manzain.
Mm.
And 2 years later, we switched the name. And then I was just working with locals just because I had no ID. When you are in the process of waiting for your visa thing to come through, you are basically just waiting, and that waiting period for us was 8 years. During that time, so I'm like, all right, what's the best way to actually make something to keep myself busy with? And all right, web design. That was HTML, CSS, doing blogs. And I could start it because I could actually own part of the company. I started with a family member. Um, and since then, my only biggest challenge been I won the entire thing. Like this is just me, and I've never been able to. And by the time that I got my first and second first deportation, I had to sign everything over. And from that time on, I could never gain it back, not even 10% of it, 1% of it.
Yep.
But then if I'm actually able and okay with, all right, so let's say, and this is like I'm thinking still out loud, if I'm opening an office in, let's say Singapore, and somebody in Singapore is very, very good, very much aligned with the type of person that I think would be a great CEO. All right, so let's just register three drops, Singapore, we share it. I come in um, with the name, with how things are done, with the network, and you need to, from ground up, bring in a client. We're teaching you everything in terms of how we do business, how we do calls, how we onboard clients, what are the services and values that we are offering. And then we tell you about how you need to hire designers, how you need to hire people, managers, run your own thing, and we share it. Anything that comes from that account is shared. The only difficulty at that time becomes as soon as clients start, because most things somebody recommended us.
Yeah.
Where is it? Which account does it go to?
Yeah, I think this is where you have this network, you've got your sense, right? Like, and you'll be able to funnel things to the right, it's just like funneling it to the right designer, right? You're like, oh, this person and that person are gonna, right? So you have
Yeah.
some system of communication, right? But you're talking legally specifically, or
I'm thinking like how is the revenue, how is the profit from that project shared?
I see. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Because if this
So
is solved, then this is a new form of expanding through jobs agency that is actually sustainable. Not just hiring a bunch of people in different places and then run it with one CEO, a bunch of managers,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you have just a factory.
this is where Wayward Group comes in again, right? There's like, it's kind of like a franchise model in a way.
Yeah.
There's like aspects of it where there is a portion of the earnings from the three drop entities that are dispersed that go up to Wayward Group,
Yep.
and it pays for the holding the space. So if it's helping the CEOs come together, right? And this is something that they want, there's value in this. I mean, yeah, and then keeping the playbook alive and evolving that protocol that enables all of this, you pay for, like, there's just part of, like, this is just part of doing business.
Yeah, so there are models, like if you go look back at early capitalism stuff, like I was reading a book about what was it, life in a city in France in like 1250. And this is when like the merchant class is starting to understand how to collaborate and figure out things together. This is where the word commune comes from.
Oh, that's
Um,
right.
you had a bunch of business people who are like goldsmiths and traders and spice merchants and all these kinds of folks, and they're starting to make money, and they hit a ceiling on that, right? And they realize that if they don't form groups to like manage risk together, like they're isolated and separate. So there are ways to pool your money so that you can stabilize the flow of funding, so you can think better, right? This is one of the biggest problems in agencies because it's so up and down, right? So basically it's a type of insurance, and like, but it's participatory. You're involved with how that stuff works, right? Like you as a merchant have a say in how the money is dispersed and what kinds of culture you are moving towards, like, and in this case, like Wayward Group plays some of that role, right? There is a sort of central banking kind of model, right? It's not centralized though. So if you have, and then funds can be distributed however they need to be. So if somebody is taking in a client, it's I think part of the mentality and the principles are you are not booking this client for you and your people. You are booking it for the health of the continued game, right? Like, and just take the amount of money that you need to grow. And if you are obviously more successful than it is at some particular style of business, you are communicating with the rest of the people in the network, and you're like, well, look, we're doing this thing, like we'd like to expand, and like you can offer that mentality to the other people in the network. Hopefully they can take it on too. But there is a way to distribute these funds that is equitable if your culture is oriented this way, right? But if I don't know what that specific culture is though. I'm trying to feel into it. We wanted to do this at Carbon Made and started, but we never got far enough because we had all of this profit and we couldn't figure out how to share it out equitably. We were missing this constraint model. I wasn't mature enough to figure out how to incentivize everybody, right? Because it needs to be a collaborative model somehow. There is still
Sure.
competition involved because you are dealing with the market, right? But the strength is in the style of collaboration that you agree to. And if you can orient people to a model that allows them to have a stability, but you're not paying taxes though. That mentality has to, that one's tough. So I don't know if that made any sense.
It needs to be two-layer, right? So there is one for the growth of that office. So that office probably needs more people full-time attached to them. I don't think shared
Sure.
resources not gonna probably work. They're gonna be
across
about designers, yeah.
franchises, yeah.
Then there is need to be a personal gain from it too, and then how does it balance with the full-time salary that they have? So example being a CEO has 10K. We 3drops is not that big. Let's just make that very clear.
Yeah.
10K, and you're bringing in a client that is let's say 100K, and your costs are 2 designers, let's say 12. Let's say 20. Yeah, just make things round. What happens from there?
Like, where does the rest of the money go?
You could peg it to some.
That's the question, though?
Yeah.
No,
so
just percent to the CEO. What is the commission or whatever we call it?
So you could peg it to margin
client
somehow, right? Like if the margin is above something, like you can. There's probably a Goldilocks zone of like sustainable margin. Like, so if you're consistently hitting like 90% margins or whatever, like where is you'd need data on this, but like what are healthy margins for the style of business? And then anything above that can go back into a pool, right? But if you're a consistent operator, like you can, and yeah, I don't know, like
well, this
comes back to the individual and like how they like to be incented too.
And the entity too. So what are we driving towards? Like, what does the company need? Is there something, because you could incentivize once you get to like a pot of money that is worth X amount, right? Then you can reap more commission, right?
Yeah.
So then you're driving like growth towards this pot of money, because then that pot of money is used for something else. Is it number of clients? Is it the margin, like efficiencies and how they're working with clients? There's what's important, like what's the most valuable for 3drops and therefore Wayward Group.
Efficiency, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then maybe it's margin, like you
Margin.
can, like in part, like it's margin driven. Once you hit these kinds of margins, like, and it can be tiered. If your margin of profit is like at 70% or 60%, you can reap X% commission. But if you get it up to a 90% margin of profit, then you can get more commission. So it could move too. Another thing, or another way we could do this is, if you were in that position, what would you expect?
Yeah.
So just,
It's
you're
such
not,
a good way. Yeah.
you're not you anymore, you're William, or a
Yeah.
CEO. Yeah, what would you expect? What would get you motivated? What kind of game do you want to play?
I was
It's not
thinking
too
about it the
easy.
other day. Yeah, because it's such a good way to, balance yourself and everything else
Hmm.
that you think are important there, and not just if you were, and I was thinking about it from a startup point of view in terms of pricing a product and the things that we are saying to market the product. Are those the things that you are looking for, or is that the price that you would pay for? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
in this case, if you take such a role, what would you expect?
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I would expect a fixed thing. I would understand that it cannot be like 5%, 10% of
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. It needs to be, it really depends, but then it needs to have some very, it cannot be, all right, this time is going to be, it needs to have some rules. And then the rules,
Yep.
margins is one of them, the
Yeah.
efficiency of the project. Um,
What if you wanted a specific kind of client too? Like you're trying to expand and you're like, I want to work with more, or we want to work with more because we don't understand this area. So there's like basically a higher commission. Like if you go land one of these guys, we'll give you more, because like,
Yeah.
there's other pieces to this too. Like it has to be a project size of X, but let's say it's hospital systems or something like that, because you're
yeah.
missing that information in the world. So you're basically putting out a bounty for, go find that and you'll get more. Well, that's like, I mean, it's kind of a fun game, because if you're a CEO and you're trying to land, you're like, okay, so I'm going to focus my energies in that area now.
Yep.
Sure, the quality of the clients depends.
Sure. And how do you measure quality then?
Efficiency and yeah.
Like, what is a quality client? What does that look like? And then if you can write that out, if you find
Yeah.
people like this, and again, there could be tiers, like
Wayward thing again. Yeah.
the best client, this is the protocol. And
So
it can,
it's an ecology of constraints. Like all the constraints need to balance off, because if you over index on efficiency, what you'll end up with is a really fragile system where you've got high margins, but the people are like working, like you start to,
yeah,
like you start to orient towards this efficiency, and the quality of work potentially goes down. Your people get stressed out or whatever. So that needs to be balanced against like the quality of client and something that you're growing into, like a challenge, right? Because if you're consistently cranking out the same type of work, maybe you have a group of people that do that. They're your consistent players. So it's about balancing out uh, the strengths and weaknesses in a constraint model so that they play off of each other, and there's a healthy tension, always a healthy tension. Like this is what working out is like. You don't go work out and do the same thing all the time because you won't get in better shape. So you need to challenge yourself, but only to the degree that you grow without blowing yourself up. So yeah.
and I do think that there's part of this is letting the CEO or whoever is the person who stands to earn this
Yeah.
commission help design it,
Yeah.
because then they have a stake in it, because they're like, I helped come up with this. Like if like they'll want to
Yeah.
win, or
That's what ownership is.
yes,
You own the process. You don't own the object. You own the process and the way the object comes into the world. If you can
Mm.
orient to that versus than the output, then you are taking care of it. You are stewarding it. You are operating in a way that is healthy for the thing, right? And then that the yeah.
Yeah. This is so good because actually, instead of a company that grows into 30, 40 people with one person with bunch of managers,
Yeah.
you have small teams, independent,
Yep.
and super efficient, and they all see it not as a job, which is something
Yes.
I
Yes.
wouldn't
Yeah.
like it, and I
No.
don't want the people that work with me to like it.
Yep. Yeah, let people design the world that they want to live within the constraints of, again, like you're going to provide that sort of like we're playing in this world. You don't get to play out here.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I mean, that you have to have some constraint. But
The theater of operation.
and then there's
It's
a fractal
yeah.
again. So it's not just the leadership that's doing this, but it's also the workers get to do this with, whoever their like supervisor is. So it's again, it's more of a peer-to-peer thing where
Yeah.
you design the world you want to live in, work in. So then it feels like you have ownership over the process. So yeah, and everything's changing. It's not like the set in stone thing where it's always like this. That gets really boring really quickly. And I don't know, that's like the world's always changing. Why would you have everything or it's always like this? Well, it might
Yep.
change.
uh one more person to be a CEO at Three Drops, then all decisions gonna make sense. Because until now, none of them did.
Yeah.
It's just been me
Yeah.
like, I feel like this now.
Yeah.
It's hard to make decisions
Oh,
alone too.
yeah.
Even if
Terrible.
you're doing it with other people, like advising or providing advice or peers that you're talking to, there's a big difference where if you have a shared like ownership over how things work with someone, even when you do one person, you get the mirror thing where you can like bounce ideas. But like what we're doing here, I think there's something special about when you get to 3 or more.
Yeah.
There's a group thing because you can start triangulating blind spots and things that you don't see as the 2 or the 1, and then it creates enough of a system that something starts flowing. I don't know how big it can get, but yeah, there's something there, I think.
I think 4 is too many. 5 is too many.
Well, split with 3.
3, there is
Yeah.
everybody get the opportunity to talk and come in. It's very easy. Like we try to do team calls and then we are shutting everything down now. But team calls are so not a right way of talking to or building a culture or just understanding each other or giving opportunity to like, hey, we are talking about, usually it's just 2 people talking on a group meeting.
Yeah.
But anyway, one more, which is salary, fine. Then whatever the structure is going to be designed with that person.
Yep.
I
think
we
that
have
makes
2
sense.
onboarded. Yeah, we have two with me, 3. Then it, because at one point it's going to be a problem of okay, now we have too many people, too many partners, which is not scalable. So there needs to be a limit. There needs to be a constraint of 4. We lock it up. There can't be more than 4 people because then decision making and the higher is just not going to be very easy. I think probably 3 hold it at 3, and I'm not one of the 3. And the other thing is a bonus structure. And by the way, it's so easy because most agencies have some sort of a kind of a bonus structure or partnership structure. It's so easy to research it, but then you kind of replicate it, and it takes you 2 years of running that replicated system to see, hey, that's not actually what I wanted to do. So probably from the beginning, not looking into what other people are doing might be a good approach to this. We've never had bonus. We had just like how good designs or good work is rewarded.
Yeah, how are the bonus structures? How do they? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. It'd be interesting to do something clever with the bonus stuff.
Well, you could like, so this is where if you have a shared pool of resources, right?
Yeah.
There's opportunity to design games where you can, I mean, I'm using game, like you can win a portion of the pot then
Yeah.
once you hit some sort of metric, and it can be qualitative or quantitative. And like if the team all knows that this is in play, then it's kind of fun because you're just like, ooh, maybe we can get this thing. Like, and it's less about the money, but yeah,
But can it
I don't
hurt
know.
you
Yeah.
once
It
you
If it
can.
don't
gets,
get it?
I think it depends on the culture.
yeah. Like
Because
if
if you don't get it, it's still in a pot that is being like held in like for the group, right? For everyone playing these games. So it's not like someone is like taking it from you. That's not gonna, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's always an opportunity to play again kind of thing. And if the stakes are such that it doesn't feel like, yeah, what does the loss feel like? What are you driving towards? What is the team, like the communal aspect of it?
I think you need to do experiments on this one. Like, I think you need to try different models. So, like, one of the models that, like, I'm trying to feel into what would incent me to perform, right? Um, I don't personally care about making a bunch of money. It's like having a big bonus. I've had those, they're fine. It's okay. But then once you have it, then like the next one needs to be bigger. Like, who cares? At a certain point, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's the only game mechanic. It's not very fun as a game. But having something where you have a distributed pool, and at the end of the year or at the end of the cycle, like the cumulative, like this is a basic bonus structure, the cumulative distribution is higher or lower based on the health of the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, you are
Sure.
paying into a pot, right? Like some sort of fund that is set aside that Wayward is managing. And like you can do a bunch of stuff with this fund, but there's a bunch of things. And there is a decision making protocol in the thing where like maybe you, if you win the pot, can uh, choose as part of your you get a bump in hierarchy maybe to like choose where that money is distributed. Do you give it to the whole company? Do you reinvest it in some way? Like, you know, there are game mechanics here, right? Like I think that the, you know, then the CEO is sensing into the company or whatever it is, and then can make a distribution that maybe will maybe people need money right now. I don't know, that's how it is. Or maybe people need like a reinvestment in some way or a new business path or something like this, right? And this
Yeah.
money can be repurposed in this way. Maybe it's a hybrid version of that.
Yeah, maybe people vote on what the funds are used for. Like there's all kinds of different things.
Yeah,
You get
because,
new computers or something. I mean, there's all
or
kinds
maybe
of,
people just want cash and that's fine, right?
yeah.
Like, you know, but if you can peg it to we as a group, there is a this is a culture thing, right? A distributed culture. Like what I would do is if I won one of these things, I would figure out how what the best way of like enlivening the current culture is with making use of this money that would add depth to the culture. And if that is like everybody needs a bonus, and then we figure out a bonus structure there and it trickles down to the rest of people, that might be fine. But is there something, you know, this all depends on the this all depends on the wealth of your organization too. Like what stage are you in? If you're early days, money is great. Like if it is making the scarcity of the entire organization, if it moves it up a level, then you are able to think from abundance, and then you have the problems of abundance, where how do we generously move this around to the places that need it, and then that's our culture. Like we are shoring up everybody, right? So this is how I was thinking about this, but how you actually you have to experiment. Like because
Yeah.
there's no one right way to do this. I think changing the bonus structure based on the seasonality of your company is really important. Like have the idea that it's going to change based on like how you're trying to move. And because it's a fractal of the same type of incentive structure you have for your individuals, right?
Yep.
This is just a global incentive structure.
Yeah, imagine if you
Yeah.
worked with a team and you were going after new business and you had like your leadership being like, all right, guys, like what's missing right now? Like, what do we want to drive towards? Like, what feels like, like missing in our culture or in people? And then it comes back to the whole menu of items. Like some people are like, I just could use the cash right now. And majority of people are like, yep, we want the cash. And then so you as a group set the goal, the bonus at something.
Cash season.
Yeah, and if you like, yeah, what happens when you lose? Like that's, but you set the goals together. So if you lose,
you all agreed on the game, yeah.
Yeah, well, and then everybody knows too that if you do lose and it was like about money and people like, then you know that your like coworker like is in a spot right now where they're feeling the burn with money. So it's like you're sympathetic to, there's a way of connecting with people, I think, just on a person level of shoot, well, I didn't get the bonus. Like, how does that impact like whatever your plans were outside of work or whatever that you're doing? And it's open, like people can support each other in that way.
Yeah, you just want to avoid a zero-sum culture, like where there's winners and losers in that sense. Like there's healthy competition where somebody who is a performer and they're on form, like they can stretch their legs, but they're not like 100 times removed from everyone else because that's a shitty race. It's just not fun. Like, and if you know they are, yeah, there are other levers for competition.
So I have to use the restroom, and we were going to talk about a bunch of other things. So I'm wondering if we want to transition. I don't know if my having to use the bathroom is a good time to transition, but
might as well be.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there was a roadmap design question that Farzad had for Dave, and then we should talk about the little experiment that we did on Telegram. Obviously, I think the Figma design thing, we should just have a separate time to do Figma.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah. They're sort of different mindsets. But we can warm it up with whatever you got for roadmap and then go from there.
All right. I'll be right back.
Okay.
We could skip roadmap.
It's up to you.
And do the Telegram and the design. I think jumping into just moving some stuff in Figma today would be a good starting point. And then we carry on the next one.
I'm eager to see how you're going to lead this thing because I don't know yet. I got a billion things going on in my head. CJ is coming over today, and we're going to be playing a little bit more with the like engineering structure, and we've got some stuff going on in the project that we're doing that is starting to come together. Like pretty interesting flows with these games and stuff. Like we did a little experiment where we picked this article. I need to send this to you actually. It's like on digital shamanism, basically. There's this like this guy has been doing a long running blog. I don't really know much about him, but have you heard about the sort of closed feedback loop systems that they're developing? They're kind of in relation to like the human computer interface stuff, like Neuralink and all these like direct interfaces. So there's going to be a software layer on these things, like apps and games and stuff. And when you have like a closed circuit of information, like the feedback loop is compressed significantly. And so there's this lab, but there's a bunch of companies in San Francisco that are playing with this. And I don't know, we talked a bunch about it, but how much they're legitimate and how much it's marketing and where they're at technologically. But the long and short of it is basically you're going to be able to, as a programmer and as a designer, you're going to be able to have like a sort of stratum where you've got information coming in real time, and then you can design code to change the environment based on the information that is coming in. And like one of the first things, like they're seeing like therapeutic like approaches to this thing, because you can basically program people's brains. Like, because if there is a like really close feedback loop, and you are trying to get a person to do something as a designer, and they do something and it's not the thing you want them to do, you can create a whole platform for them. You know, games work this way, but if you've got a direct feed on how they're operating, there's like a sort of subconsciousness to it, right? And you can slowly, it's wild. And then you add psychedelics into this, which are like removing identity structures effectively, like removing blockages, then you can offer, I think that there's a lot of potential here, both in risky things and healthy things. Obviously, it's one of these terrifying things. But anyways, we were talking about that. So there's an article that sort of covers that realm of technology. And so what we did is we played a game where each of us, like, we set a date, you know, on a Monday, we're going to come together and talk. And what before then, take a look at this article and then write up your first impressions, like, you know, 300 words, something 500 words, it doesn't matter really, in whatever format you want. And then we're just sort of fooling with this. And then we came together on Monday, and then each person, we took a minute to like sort of read through each person's cyclical or serialized. And then the person sort of spoke to like what they felt about the thing. There's 4 of us. And then at the end, we sort of combined our thinking on this, and the structure of thought, the intelligence that we created in this, and part of it is that it was put into a black box and we didn't see each other's writing until we were together. So the perspectives didn't have, like, it wasn't like I read hers and she read mine and then you're basing it on, they're developed separately. And when you come together, it has a holographic feel to it. You get like a pretty wide view of a topic area, and you see where there are similarities and differences. And so you can play with that in a conversation, and it's really fruitful. It's super interesting. So a system of publishing based on this kind of, and communication based on this model, I think is interesting. And you have these different types of games that create shared context, and the depth of these contexts is a lot higher than playing a stupid game for likes, right? So the purpose is to understand better with each other, having a longer term conversation. And so the next phase we're doing of this is doing another black box, where we're just writing up our impression of what happened. I just expressed part of mine. And then we're going to come together and sort of read the impressions. I don't know if we're going to do that synchronously, but we're playing with synchronous, asynchronous, this movement between those two. And then it's constraint design again. And then part of the bonding practice is all agreeing and designing these practices together. And if sometimes somebody has a good idea for one, sometimes somebody else, and you just sort of, you say yes to it, and then, you know, figure out until there's an elegance that sort of emerges from the group, and then everybody is bought into it, and then you talk about how it was as part of the fractal practice. It's cool. So then we're figuring out technology to facilitate this style of communication, which gets back to a lot of what we just talked about. What are the communication channels and methodologies, and, you know, how can you build these things adaptably and quickly for the purposes of what you're trying to achieve? You can't do it with like a fixed structure like Slack or something. It doesn't make any sense. You need to be able to build it as you go and move things around and create things rapidly, and then do experiments. And then once those experiments work, you encode them and then maybe make a clearer pathway. It's working. So I think it's very cool. That's an update.
Where did
Welcome
you
back.
pick up the word elegant?
When?
Where?
It's the best like shorthand description of a design process, like everybody has a feeling for elegance, and people who design have a better, and we, you know, it's my shortest, like, okay, so if a process requires a lot of steps or an inordinate amount of energy, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so qigong really not like nailed this one for me,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just years and years, like decades and centuries of people like finding the exact right, you know, thing that produces these results. And when you have an elegant flow from one thing to another, it feels so good. And there's a beauty, a natural beauty that sort of, and so nature has these things all the time. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh, look at how that tree does that thing. It is in perfect response, using the exact amount of energy to do the thing that it needs to do, right? No
Mm-hmm.
more, no less. There's a Goldilocks zone, a right
Mm-hmm.
balance. And designing things in this way is what artistry is what craft is. And when you see somebody who is like, I don't know, it's just, you've got some process and it's got all this crap all over it. And clearly the designer is like trying to show off or trying to be in the design. Like it is not facilitating the flow of something. That's
Mm-hmm.
inelegant. But when you have something that is like the you know, three components that operate together in an efficient way that produce an engine, that's elegant, right? And it's repurposable, it's shareable, it's explainable. Like this is what elegance is to me. So as an aspiration, it's not always accomplishable, and the way that you get to elegance is by creating a mess and like moving, finding the natural channels through the mess. And it's intuitive to the degree, and then yeah, I don't know, so I don't know where or when, but this has been, this is like I think an aspirational constraint for the design process. If it is elegant, people will know, and it's also mimetic this way. People will pick it up and relate with it more closely.
The
Let's
lawn is
see.
getting cleaned up.
Yep.
Um, so we can talk about the Telegram thing that we did, and then
Yep.
jump right into Figma to move some things for this new thing, and then skipping roadmap.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Just a
Telegram.
little bit, yeah. Just getting over the fear of blank canvas on this call, putting
Sure.
something in there, and then we can continue it.
Sure.
And I think the second call, I mean, the call after this for the design, we maybe switch up. We start with this, and then perhaps once we hit a block, we can talk about other things.
Cool. Works for me.
Works for me. Ooh,
Mm.
jinx.
Pinch poke. You owe me a Coke.
I don't know the pinch poke, but jinx, you owe me a Coke. Yeah.
Starts with pinch poke.
Added more stuff in there.
You guys need to give me the permission to share my screen.
Oh.
It's an advanced sharing option. All right, you should be allowed now.
I've been granted access. All right, so here we go. Hats off to Figma to creating the only software that enabled design collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
There'll be some others, probably, at some point. Well, what do we want to talk about with the Telegram stuff first, and then we can get into this.
The Telegram stuff helps with this, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that's nice about the Telegram thing is, like, I'm so much more familiar with Dave's stuff, but getting the perspective of everyone in the group So it was nice to get Farzad's because I
Yeah.
got like a little slice of him that I haven't seen yet, and it was nice because it was pretty intimate. So that was like for me, like I liked that. Like I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm getting to see this side of Farzad. Not that you're not vulnerable in the calls, but you get something different with writing when people write about things in that kind of way where you're being really open,
Yeah.
which is cool. And I always like to see how different the submissions are. I don't know what to call the things, the like writing.
I think that there is a social media ruined it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason that I admired Tumblr was you could find so intimate posts of
Hmm.
people. People had webcams and had them on,
Yep.
Yeah.
and this is before live streaming. And that to me, just getting a glimpse into somebody's
Yep.
actual life, not what they're pretending or kind of
Yep.
have a work title or something and they need to behave such a way. That was what made Tumblr.
Hmm.
And then they were so good at before the thing of startups. You need to optimize your conversions during the for the onboarding stuff and then blah blah. They go community,
Yep.
and then they started doing a bunch of meetups. Just did everything right, perhaps accidentally.
Yeah. Definitely accidentally.
Yeah,
But they went with the tool matched the flow of creativity, like the flows of creativity.
Yep.
Yeah.
constraints.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
There are four or five ways. What was it?
Mhm.
Like
Well, it was
five.
text, audio,
Yeah.
video, image.
So
Yeah,
this is the concept of primitives. Like, what are your fundamental primitives in a system, right? And how can they interoperate? Um, so they had them split out into types, right? And most of the at the time images and like memes and this kind of thing exploded, but um, so the place I'm at with this now is like, and this is kind of what CJ and I think are going to talk about today some, is like there are so many more types of media for expression,
Yep.
um, more than just images, more than just and more than just text and these kinds of things, and the overlaying of these types and the ability to uh, have multiple people operate within the same sort of area gives you, it's the holographic media thing again. So this is the place that I'm most interested in playing, is like, uh, and then how do you express these things? How do you move through them? How do you share them? And what is the public and private nature of creation and sharing, right? So like in Telegram, we have a private area where we can express effectively anything that we need because we have a good faith environment where we
Yep.
know that anything will be accepted in there, which means that you can stretch your legs, right?
Yep.
And that's nice, that's necessary. But then if there's a permeable barrier where you can then push this stuff outward a layer, or you have like maybe a closer concentric circle of people, like, and then it goes wider to the public. Like, it's just the ability to have the media move through whatever layer of privacy. Anyways, this is how I've been thinking about the overarching mentality, which we can try to bring it down to surface. So how about this? You want a social, and like, what is the environment that you've described what Tumblr did? Like, what was your experience with posting there and consuming there and curating there? What was the balance there? What do you think is a good mixture of those things? creation and curation, I think, need to be balanced in a creative network really well. Um, yeah.
I think it gave you the tools to express yourself to begin
Okay.
with. It just made it easier. So you go, is what I wanna share, does it need to be, is it a picture? Is it something that I see, or is it a text? Is it something that I wanna say? So those two. And then the constraint on, I think at the beginning the texts were limited. You couldn't
Hmm.
post an essay there. So it's just like a short, just get it out
Yeah.
there. Um, I think that just made it easier to get over the first step of start sharing things. And I
Hmm.
think they were one of the first that personalized blogging. It was so difficult previously to have an interface that you could easily personalize. And I think Peter from Tumblr had a big influence on me in a way that he designed so kind of, his designs had a feeling similar to how Dave's designs has a feeling. You
Hmm.
feel something when you use Dave's designs. Peter's was same. I think mine is not. My way of designing is it doesn't have a feeling. It has a structure. I'm very structured. It's not an emotional design. But with Dave's and Peter's, um, you could feel something, and usually that feeling is home. You feel comfortable, you feel safe.
Yeah.
Um, so you're already in a very good space to become, to let go, to kind of share. Versus I'm a tool designer, and I think these guys are community designers. um
I think we're all a little bit of all of it. It's just there are different strengths, you know?
yeah, but it's the same, like yeah, anyway, like the brown designer, or the what is that company I admire so much? Dyson.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Dy- Freaking Dyson. That
Hmm.
company is one and only.
Yeah.
I don't know any company that is that, they got it all. It's just like
Yeah.
teenage engineering is probably a younger version
Yeah,
of
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Dyson is
there's
the
a
industrial version, yeah. And Panic
yeah,
is a software version, yeah.
exactly. Panic is one of these things. It's being in touch with, so part of this is like really understanding the type of people who are going to be coming through your product, right? Being you to use it, to embed in it, and in when you have like a communal type thing, like it's a place to the degree that it is, but that place is mediated by relationship, and like the environment that you're in is going to produce uh different types of feeling, right? So like you go, I mean, you can see this in the real world. Like, if you design a study, for instance, a place where you're going to think and focus and be comfortable and not worried about things, that's very different than going to a stadium, right? And like, so there is that the level of sort of decoration, like in your designs, can offer this feeling space, but there's also the flows of information and the types of interactions that are available to you, right? Like, um yeah, there's a depth to this that's more than just the colors, and all that stuff are nice, like you can do that, but yeah, so it is, what is the environment afford, what is it what does it suggest? Like, and if we are trying to create something for creative people, like for a creative ecology, then what are the types of things that you can do? Do you have to start from scratch? Like what level of polish are you trying to afford people? Like how does the how do the relationships that you are forming, like what are the possibilities there? You can't, all you can do is offer like an area of play. And it's not with a creative environment, you're giving helpful tension so that people can goof around in there, right? Because they are by nature creative. They will reuse and hack and fuck with the thing in a million different ways, and that's what you're looking to do, right? um, I think that anything that I want to build needs to have a strong participatory vibe, right? Like a social environment where you're just sitting there consuming is unhealthy. I
Yeah.
don't think that, and it creates a stratum between creator and consumer, like producer and consumer, that is not good for people. Um, so it's then about mechanism, like how do you offer that environment for people? I think it's like, I like the idea of improvisation and playing, right, as a core concept in any creative community, um, any expressive community, uh, which is where the constraint design being game based makes a lot of sense to me. Like, if you can play games together, it solves the problem of the blank canvas. And that, you know, and then it's back to the collaborative competitive balance too. Like, how can you let your people who are on form shine, but there are multiple roles in the system, right? So like, if you're a curator and you are good at picking the people who are very good, you can gain status in this way, you know, but the status is not mono necessarily monetizable, you know. This is the creator economy stuff. I think that shit is getting pretty whatever. So, and can you build, like, so you're doing the mind mapping stuff, can you build like a web of creation together that people can move through, and then those channels can be something that the curators can bring up, and then they are navigable in some way. um yeah, I'm just spinning all this up.
Yep. Well, I think one of the things Farzad was talking about, and that piggybacks on what I was saying about Telegram, is and you're generalizing more, Dave, is around the
Yeah.
environment. And
Yep.
if it's a safe place, like whatever that means, where people feel comfortable sharing, then you're going to get, we talked about this last time, this higher fidelity of what your experience is and what you're thinking, like, to share. So what you create feels closer to like you,
Yep.
which is good for bonding. Because if you are sharing something that is closer to you because you feel safe to do that, other people will do it in kind, and then you're actually starting to share space and to bond with each other, because you're getting the view of the person, not the view of a system moderated interaction, basically. Because the system moderated interactions, what you get with the bigger, where it's not safe, is, I mean, I don't know what chicken or the egg, but when you have a system that's moderated through something as simple as a like,
Yeah.
and the follow thing is like, that's fine. We don't have to talk about that, but it's more of the interaction that you want to see between people. Size comes in here too, I think. It's
I
hard to do
think
this
what
really big.
we need to play with, like, simple, like,
Your audio is like really
Yeah.
rough. There's a bunch of like,
Better.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just gets really like background noise and stuff.
Yeah, it's going through the computer. The headphones died. um yeah, I think coming up with like a simple, like the simplest possible form of a game for this thing, and then how you would navigate through the output of that game, Like, and then what the size of the playing field will look like, because this is, again, the philosophy I have for anything that I want to build is depth at scale. So how do you get that to happen? Tumblr had a version of this because they had the idea of reblogging, right? And then people could layer on and layer on. TikTok is the like advanced version of this where people can remix stuff and build this way. Yeah. Like, how can you like lessen the necessity for being like a standout individual in these things? How can you collaborate towards something that is bigger, right? And this is a lot of the game styles that we're playing with here. Yeah. So is there a game type that is multimedia in nature that then we can prototype that mentality and then see what it's like to sort of move through a stack of these or a system of these, you know? Like, what is the minimum? We're trying to find like an elegant first game that we could prototype with somebody, right? With some buddies.
So the simple game that we had where you post a picture and a story at like snapshot in time, like,
Yeah.
can we use that as a starting point?
I
What are
think
you
that's
looking
one of
for?
so if we're orienting this more towards creative expression, I mean, I guess that works, right? So yeah, who are we trying to attract to this thing as well? Like,
Excuse me,
wow.
I squeaked. um, yeah, that's a weird question to ask with this.
I mean, so who are the
It's people
multiplayers
who are
in the
looking
game?
for a depth of connection that they're
Hmm.
feeling a paucity of in their
Yeah.
current life. And they want, like, it's people who want to connect with people digitally too. Like, that's part of this, because finding the people that you want to connect with in one place geographically is hard, especially if you're on the fringe pushing out into, you know, interesting, weird territory. The likelihood of finding someone in the same geographic space is probably not high. So you go to the internet. So you need to be able to sort of recreate the feeling of intimacy and like getting to know someone, that you can do in person. But
Yep.
another piece is like what the digital affords. So it's someone that, yeah, has some understanding of digital engagement, but the digital affords another level of depth that you don't get in person, because you can build in this like asynchronous sort of buffer where you can work with an idea or, yeah, hone your thinking on something and then share it,
Yep.
which is nice. You get a different view of someone. So you could, it's also, yeah, there has to be some digital savvy, I guess. There's a learning curve there, but you could do this with people that are in the same geographic space and time and or space, because you'd get another view of them by doing games like this that you wouldn't get just from hanging out in person.
Yeah. So the thing that's popping up here is conversation and the methods and styles and medias of conversation. Like, so there's this style that we are synchronized right now, speaking in voice and then through Figma, right? And then there is the asynchronous thing where there are games like I post something, you respond to that something, I respond to that something, but you can do that over time. Yeah, and then like the byproduct of this is that like you could get a small group together, they could communicate. That is an artifact of the conversation, and you are trying to create over time a chain of conversation that can flower into something larger, like a longer term. So yeah, depth and length of collaboration, right? Um, okay.
I mean, we are three people. We need to see kind of who we are and then see what's unique about us and then understand, because we basically, between the three of us, these are the people that we are trying to attract with this thing. If we
Hmm.
understand what's unique about us, we can understand who are we designing this for. um Now, does it have to be, how do you interact with each other? Multiplayer meaning the black box was you wouldn't be able to see what other people have written until everybody have shared theirs.
Yeah.
Yep. So those are
That's
like
very
the
important because when you guys shared and then I
Yep.
follow
Yep.
kind of the same rhythm as you did. If
Yep.
I did it the other way, it would be something else. So
The
that's a
black
good
box is
thing.
one of the fundamental like design things that we've found for this.
yeah,
Um,
because exactly what you were talking about. CJ just mentioned this with the game that Dave just told you about what we played. He's like, we avoided group think because you couldn't see what people were sharing ahead of time. And then what's cool is you get to see very different perspectives on the same thing in this case, which is neat because there's no right way of seeing something. So it opens things up.
okay, so our first constraint here is games that have black boxing. Like, what are the different types of games? Like, black boxes can be the fundamental like vulnerability component, and then that's
Yeah,
a
there is vulnerability there too. Some people won't like this.
no, that's fine, and then they won't play.
That's
So,
good
and
though.
then
That's like a way for me like to feel into because this is not for everyone, right?
yeah.
We're starting at one place. So if it makes some people so uncomfortable that they're going to be like, I don't understand it, I won't do it. That's a good thing because
So
there are
black
people who
boxes
will.
across each media, right? An audio black box, a video black box. We can overdo it with this game mechanic. Um, and then what are the second order game mechanics of a black boxing type thing? Like where do they go? How do they connect? This kind of thing. I like this. It's a fine constraint. We've proven that it does produce novel results. Um, yeah, then we're talking about small groups that agree to mint a little relationship, like a communal like collaboration group, right? I
Hmm.
think that these things can get up to, I mean, they could get pretty big, but we're trying to scale it with depth. So like the larger they get, the harder it is to like look through everybody's stuff, and then you need curation and these kinds of things. But my guess is that like up to 12 people, you can probably like get a fair amount of like interesting information there. Um, but anyways, don't have to jump ahead there. So basically, I think the place we're at is like trying to come up with a few more multimedia based black boxing games. So, and then what is the basic structure of managing these black boxes? Like how can like technology help with that? And is there a protocol, a scaffold that you can like take any type of media, take participants, and then take temporal, like like the scaffolding is coming together. So like, are you in the same place together? Like each one of these things is a game mechanic. Um, like over what period of time, like you could do multi-step ones, like do 2 posts over 2 weeks or 2 posts over 2 days and then unbox. So unboxing, I think, is a stage in this. So everybody puts their content into the box, and then there is a synchronous or asynchronous event where there is an unboxing, and at scale you can do an unboxing across a lot of people. So you have a lot of people playing a game, and then the results are revealed, and then the curators can go in and then pull out the interesting stuff. Or you have like, anyway, I'm jumping ahead. So yeah.
Yeah.
Is
So
it a
the
game we are designing or a platform?
Yeah.
both. So there's something, what I was just going to say is what the technology affords is the launching of the game, right? But the game would be launched on a platform. And this is where certain people could like sign up to be part of like a cohort maybe, or it's a game series. We don't like, what is it? It's the season. So I'm going
Yeah.
to sign up for this thing, and it might be a one-time thing. It might, I mean, we figure out all of that. But what the technology helps with is scheduling, so you're getting people together to do the same thing, and then just operating the thing. So someone like me as a human who goes to yoga class and is like, shit, I forgot to send the prompt, right? So that the tech can prompt people to play the
Yep.
game. So it holds like the space and the rules and stuff like that, and it helps with the actual perfunctory, like the doing of the thing. And then again, it's like holding the information and presenting it at a certain point in time. And then on the flip side, like there probably is synchronous chat options within this, so that, or video chat, where you can come in after you play games to talk about the experience. Or it could be, I don't know, like you're on the platform then and you're looking at some of the game stuff, or you just played a game and you surf over through like the mind map thing to someone who played a similar game, and like there's some connection there, and you're like, oh cool, Dave has an interesting perspective on something I was writing about, and then you want to sync up with him to talk. So yeah, we're just,
Yeah, there's the gameplay, and then there's so after, after, like, say for instance, you play sports or something, and then you go to the pub, or you
yeah,
sit around in the park or whatever, and you talk about what happened, and
yep,
then that influences the next round of play, right? And then if you're in a particular, I mean, this is where there are spontaneous groupings where you can play with people
yep.
that you have played with before, and you can play long term. This is where I don't know. There are multiple expressions of this patterning, and like some of them will be short term gameplay for people who don't have a lot of time. You could do that version. I'm less interested in that kind of thing. There are so many distractions in the world. I would prefer that the gameplay helps you grow in some way, helps you meet other people, helps you play the game better, and that the playing of the game is helpful in helping you express and understand and come to a centering, like that's just, the ethos of the thing for me.
I mean, we can have batches in terms of, I mean, having, if it's a platform and you would choose a game and each have a certain number of participants to fill in until this starts. And then once it starts, the results are not shared until everybody have shared theirs. And whatever the topical or objective of that game is, it will be revealed, I guess, randomly, once everybody have entered the room. Um, but then are there levels for each game? You can, if it, how it, if this is a game, it's gonna become very difficult. If it's a platform, then we need to come up with a bunch of different games, which is not what we are doing here. I think what we are building is a tool that enables people to become vulnerable. Um, but it's a multiplayer
But you become
thing.
vulnerable by playing the games, right? Or that's,
Play is vulnerable, like, and play can be fun or it can be serious, right? But the idea is that when you come here, this is what Tumblr was very good at, is that you could role play. Like enormous amounts of subculture communities were developed through Tumblr, because you could come in and be a furry, and then like write from the perspective of your fursona, and
Yep.
like have other people who are willing to play in that area with you. And then you get subcultures like C-punk developing, and then like I wear clothes like this, and you do too, and then how do we push the thing
Yep.
forward? And there's no market mediation there. It's people playing together. So what we're trying to do is engender an environment of play. That is the more important thing. The technology just helps facilitate that, makes it easy to post, makes it easy to coordinate, but the underlying ethos needs to be one of play. It needs to be generative, it needs to be collaborative, and it can be competitive, but there are so many fucking places to compete right now. There are
Yep.
very few places where you can collaborate at
Yep.
scale to build
Yep.
something together. And kids love this, right? Like already, like the mentality in youth is like this. Kids play. And like one of the hardest parts of this as you become an adult is to retain your child, like retain the ability to goof around, like seamlessly move between identities, right? This is where like taking on personas and playing in a game, like so you can mint a persona, then go play a vulnerability game where it is not performative vulnerability. It only works if you are coming to it in an honest way. So how can you build these environments where honesty is rewarded in the system? So yeah, games are just a mechanism to induce play, right? And the ultimate version of this in the platform sense in the open world is that people are making games for each other.
Yeah,
Like
think
this
of it
is
as
why
a
things like
game builder.
Minecraft and all that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That might help. Like it's like a game builder that people can build the games themselves. The same thing as the CEOs of 3 Drops can come build a game for themselves to work
Yes.
together to like. This is just a simplified, it's not a business. It's a vulnerability.
Yeah, what are the constraints? What are the timings or whatever? And then this is where you have the community come up with formulas, and the formulas for games can be forked and shared, and
Yep.
like so rather than just the media, you have the ability to take a formula and then bring in players of your own, right? And then tweak a little of the few of the knobs to see what comes of that. And if that produces a novel result, then you offer it back into the community. Like you could have a marketplace for all this stuff and make money on it, but that's unimportant. Um, yeah, like the idea is that you are continuing to play the game. The game is affording new gameplay styles, and what we provide is primitives to do this well in an environment that has like private public permeability that is conducive, like that's an elegant constraint conducive to producing like intimate play.
It's a chat app. It
That's
could
one
be
layer.
if it's that, yeah, if it's that format, it's a little bit easier to try to have a mental image of this, and then we can move it to other kind of formats. But as a group chat,
Hmm.
the game is nobody can see each other's messages. There is a topic. Once the room has hit the limit of participants, we'll see what needs to be discussed. And we need to share it without overthinking things. So the first thing
Yeah,
that comes out should go out. Um, and once
that's a
everybody,
quick play style. Yeah.
or yeah,
So like that's a fast one. You can do a slow one too, right? Like speed is one of the levers. So like you can have, yeah, you can have people in the same place who are online at the same time playing one of these games. And I think that slowing down and taking time makes makes the thing deeper. Like you're not in a rush. You don't have to anywhere to be. Like, take time with your response. Like open up a little bit. Like it's not, I mean, there's a fast version of this too that's like whip smart. Like You know, you can't, that can be a game mechanic, like, you know, 60 seconds, whatever you're thinking, get it out, right? Stream of
Sure.
consciousness. Don't think, go, go, go. I mean, that's one way to do it. Like,
And also
and that,
it helps with
yeah,
with the
no, no,
decision
go ahead.
making. So you know how you ask a question and the first person that answers and everybody else's answers kind of is adjusted to some format of that
Yep.
first
Yep.
answer.
Yep.
Yep.
But what a wonderful thing would be if you ask a question, everybody answers, then we see it. But
Yep.
where do you take it from there? Is it threads? Is it um because it cannot end there. So we say the topic is this, and this type of topic needs a day of thinking, get back to it tomorrow, is an instant thing. Just share an image now and add a text to it. All right, that can be now. What do you think about this? You have 3 hours to answer. Once you see it, the time starts. But once everybody answered, what's the second step?
So I think context shift. So you you can start with a topic or a subject or something like that, and you have people reflect on it, and you push it into a black box, right? And then those are revealed, and then like there, you know, we did that version where people discuss synchronously the unboxing. There can be an async version where you do a couple of these context shifts. So the next one is, okay, now think about it in terms of something else, right? So like you have answered in terms of like say economics or whatever, like there's something. Now think about it in terms of culture, right? And you can, and then so you are getting multiple perspectives over the same people, and then you come together into something, and you are in a place where like you are outside of what your normal thinking is. That is what we're trying to induce, like moving people through context so that they are encountering lines of thought through other people and through themselves that they wouldn't encounter otherwise. Because in that originality is new identity, new ways of seeing the world, right? And then that expression is more centered and aligned with the person, because you can get, so you're basically like, think about it this way, all right, do the same thing thinking about it this, there's these folding techniques, I think.
Sure.
um yeah, we are trying to creatively shift your perspective, right? And then yeah, I don't know what the patterning is that we have to try. We have to do these experiments. Yeah, it's the async sync thing, that part of it.
I guess rotating. So it doesn't matter who chooses the topic, it rotates between the members, participants. Or who chooses the topic? We probably, if it's gonna be um, a journaling thing or some inspiration from there, there are going to be some templates that people can do and just
Yeah,
interesting for people to answer those.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the styles of these things, the prompting systems, there are little games that are portable, right? And some of those games are going to have like plug in your own X. So like here's a 3-part game where you change context 3 times. And each time you change context, you come together and you move apart and you come together, right? Um, and there may be like, so say for instance, you know, it's a creative thing or it's a sense making thing, like in the like you, yeah, I don't know, this one I haven't thought this far out, but the topic should be supplied by the group rather than the system. I mean, the system can sometimes do coordinated topic games so that you can get the whole community at large, but the way I see this is small groups intimately playing with each other and then maybe sharing the results of that play, if that makes any sense, in a larger sphere. The big open world games where it's just thousands and millions of people,
Yeah.
I think, are not good. I am not interested in playing in those environments anymore.
What do we want to accomplish with this? Like, there need whatever we try to accomplish with this comes in the second layer. So we know how to get this started, but then where do we go after it? Once everybody answered, where should we direct them?
So this is where, like, I would probably not get to this place yet where we're playing in this area. So I see this as a pretty long-term project for me. Like, I am interested in how to design systems like this, right? Because there are 1,000 expressions of this kind of thing. So what I'm mostly interested in is yeah, the relational aspect of these things. Like, this is a good way to get into some of the, like, gameplay I want to know if these mechanics can work and create a healthy community. I want to create healthy creative communities, where, and
That's the
I'd
goal.
ultimately like to do this, like, and offer it so that people can fork it and build their own and do this kind of thing. And then if there is, like, I want to do it in the open rather than having this thing be something that is VC backed and supposed to grow enormously or whatever. I want it to mimic how the decentralized internet works. And if the ownership structures are, like, oriented towards people who are playing the game and participating in the game, right? Um, like, I would like it to be a sort of fruitful communication commons, where we are offering primitives and infrastructure and administration and facilitation, these kinds of things, but the gameplay is building itself over time. That's my larger goal in this thing. The smaller expressions of these things, like, I would like a place where I could go goof around with people, like, and know that that I'm building relationship. I am pushing myself in creative endeavors, uh, like, as a photographer, as a illustrator, or as a conversationalist. Um, these are my, like, and yeah, offering as a service, like, personally, like, serving a community like this, where if there are ways for people who play these games to grow their own businesses and, like, make their own versions of things. I don't know. This is, yeah, that's where I'm at with this whole thing. Specifically for the actual product or products, I think that there are tons and tons of products. The same way that you were thinking about, like, uh, branching 3 drops, I'm thinking about scaffolding for many types of apps, right? And how they hang together. Is there an overarching ethos that people can build product from? That's where I'm mostly concerned. Uh, it's hard for me to get down into the specifics of individual apps yet because I'm still working on. Like, you have to, though, like, to build these things. I don't know if that answered your question.
I think it's two ways. One, you create the room, you add the participants, you wait until they come in, you choose a topic together, you start, you get the answer. The other one is there are topics there, random people join. They all, once they're all gathered, they start answering the questions, and once the answers are revealed, you kind of find who to connect with further.
Where do the
If
answers
these
go?
are random. You know how poker rooms are filled up with random people when you play digitally?
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. I'm interested in what happens with the answers, and that goes back to the mind map sort of thing, and, like, what the navigation like that is. And then also these games, if you create like an intimacy with people and like a familiarity with how each other's brains work, how do you build from that? Like, how do you make something as a group? Like, are you like, let's say you wanted to publish something. What does that look like? So that's also bigger picture. Again, it's the healthy creative community though.
Yeah.
You're creating outputs. There's individual stuff that you're doing to get to know the group better, but then if the group wants to make something together, does the system afford that? I don't know. Yeah, and what is shared, what is private, like that kind of thing.
That's interesting.
That's something
This
we're
was
coming
more
up
of
against.
yeah, something has been created. Let's say this can be a problem or this can be a person. And then whatever other people's input is, they are kind of visualized differently. And then you can kind of connect the boxes together to kind of get a map of the dependencies. You need to solve this to get this right and things like that in your life. Here, if we go with this is a controlled room, you invite people that you know to get something out of. So an example of this, we need to have a question that people answers. It's not a voting thing. Are we trying to help people to get aligned, or are we trying to help people find? It can be used for so many different things. I think for that to come out, you kind of need to build this part, just this part so far, and then see what comes out of it. And building this far is a few days of worth of work. And then we would try it to see what comes out of it. Because
Yeah, it's methodology on this. Like, so right now, what I'm interested in is finding other people who want to play these types of games. And the best way to do this is this publishing mechanism. We are going to go play the games together with shitty software. We're building stuff off the shelf or whatever, and then we are publishing how we're going to do this. So we are sharing videos. We are like offering the code or whatever. This is how we're doing this. Here's a black box game. Here's how you can play it with your friends if you want. Most people aren't going to do this for now. And then trying to encourage other people to come and play with us, because if we can't do that, if we can't find the types of people who are willing to do this manually, then trying to do it at scale is yeah. So slow is the way I think that this needs to go. Because yeah, we could build the software it's fine. Like, what are we trying to prove out with the software, I guess, with a build like this? Like, we could build the scaffolding and a game type with prompts. It's fine. I mean, and then who are we trying to get into the game? Like, how are we attracting people to do this? Like, I think that once we have the answers on the people, then the software sort of fills itself in. I'm hesitant to build anything without a direct need for building it and people to build it for, without knowing what the fuck we're doing. Like, I want to be able to, I mean, we've been doing this. It's slow, but you have to wait for coordination to happen and then you move. So this is the style that I'm experimenting with now. So I don't know. I don't know. This is
You
I
don't want to
being
think
build yet.
obstinate about this. I am waiting for the right time to build. Like, what are we building here? Like, why do we need to build it? Like, what?
I think we could overthink this a lot. Like this seems like a good starting point. I don't think things like this can be duct taped together with existing solutions, because then we are limited by that, by what we are able to do in those tools. I think we know some of the basics of the things that we need to play with. And there is a center that kind of holds the conversations. There is a topic.
Yep.
There is input from everybody. Now we kind of reveal them at the same time, or we wait for everybody to come in, and then once everybody shared, then we reveal it. We have that, and it becomes something. It produces some. It's it's either one post, there's things next to each other, whatever, and then we publish it. And we do this just like we do these calls. We just put everything online from the start, including this file, and we build the iOS app, very, very basic one that we can start using and then see. The answer needs to come naturally. We cannot design it. We can design up until the point where we get the answers. Then we try to figure out what would be the right solution for this. And people naturally want to probably will join the conversation or want to become part of this if they see a potential of this. And we crowdsource the ideas or next steps. But I think if we just agree on like we think these are the core features, we cannot live without them, we build them. Then we move them all around all the time.
We're saying the same thing. It's just methodology. Like I am currently interested in building in, like, I'm not interested in building an iOS app, really. I want to build with open technologies as much as possible here. This is something that is a challenge for me, like taking things, and I don't have a specific way of describing how we're building yet. Like, but there is something that I am sensing into. Like, I do not want to be locked into anybody's platform. I would like to support open technologies wherever possible. I would like to have this stuff be available in the commons, which slows down development significantly. I'd also like the people who are building this to be playing the game. Otherwise, I don't understand how, like, I don't want to contract it out. I want to build it myself and then get out of the way when it's time. I'm kind of not in. Yeah, go ahead.
I think we should talk to CJ about this general, like, what we've scaffolded out here, because he'll understand it because we've been playing the game with him, and then talk about how we build it non-iOS, because he can build it, right? And he's
iOS is, we will build something in iOS at some point. I'm not saying that that's off the table, but yeah. So just the finding, like, a small group of people who can build this together and, like, get into the problems and understand it together. Like, it's slower, but it's a fractal of the style of gameplay. Like, the way that you're building it should be the thing that you're offering to the people who are going to play. And then I think that this is a good way to seed a project like this. And it takes a lot longer and it takes a lot more communication, but I think it's worth it doing this way. I don't know, because Carbon made work this way, and its longevity was based on this style. So I'm taking the things that work there. It's scene based. Get a scene of people together who believe in the same kinds of things and have them build, and then have an open invitation for other people to join the scene. But scenes take a little while. They're slow, but when they catch, they go really quickly. But you need to have a strong foundation. And, like, manufacturing scenes doesn't work. It doesn't. Like, they are flimsy and they fall apart when the money disappears and the status disappears and all this other stuff. Like, yeah, I'm pretty solid on this.
A mind map way of building games. So, meaning there are steps like how we've laid it out here. There are going to be features within each. So if you want to ask a question, you take that component, and then if everybody needs to come in and answer or not, if it's a black box or not, or whatever. Like there are going to be different pieces that people can put together in whatever order they see and then play it. That would be more like what you're saying, Dave.
The primitives, yeah. So it's part of this is figuring out how the engineering is going to work to tie these primitives together, like in a way that supports like these older technologies that have been around for a long time. Because I also don't want to store people's data. So how are we going to do that? Because I think that storing people's data is a liability for any sort of company. I don't want to do it. So how are we going to distribute this thing? Like, what does the model look like there? So these things are just slowing us. They're slowing us down. But if we can solve them, like the thing is more and more like stable, and it's more and more sustainable. Because the reason that Tumblr isn't around anymore, it costs like $10 million a day to operate that fucking thing. It's dead. Only gigantic corporations can do this. And so this is why Tumblr isn't around. And if it costs that much money, if it is not efficient in that sense, it is not elegant in its design, it will die. And I'm uninterested in building one of those.
This is a decision making, it could be a decision making platform where
it can be all of these fucking things. So the size of this monster isn't, sorry.
The tools are, if we say asking a question is one thing, and then there are 4 different type of answers. Is it an image, is it an audio? Are you allowed to answer with another question? We have those, but then the starting point is it can be ask a question, it could be choose whatever, and there a component can be, you know, those prototyping tool, that origami from Facebook. Like I'm just mentally, that's the image that I'm having to let people design their own thing. So they are this is a tool maker, and people, it might become a community builder, it might become a chat thing, but it's prototyping
flows, interactions, decision making.
So that's exactly decision making.
You're getting there. Yes. So like this is so designing the primitive so that people can come with the culture that they already have and then create constraints, and through a system we are giving them the componentry of doing this in a way that is supportable based on your organization, right? Like you shouldn't have to be a like doing this SaaS. You could build a SaaS version of this. It's fine. It would work. But I'm interested in the larger picture of the million versions of this thing that are possible if you design appropriate primitives. And each layer of like infrastructure that we add in needs to tie into the other layers of infrastructure in an elegant way so that it is scalable with depth.
Oh man, onboarding would be so much easier with tools like this. I'm thinking like some things that's very difficult to get people aligned on. Do you think as a, like we have a struggle of
like team building?
Yeah, because we have a struggle of making people understand stand-ups are important. Perhaps you don't see the importance of it, but we do, because the reason that we have it is because we don't track your time. We don't care how many hours you work. We just need to, when people start their day, they need to know where you left things off, and then they carry it on. So just write 3 blinds, and that's difficult to get into the work. So that becomes in, all right, ask a few questions. If you think that's important or not, then that's it. If you don't, then we need to have an answer for it. And it's the same thing with like clients, how to onboard or how to pitch projects to clients. Do they have this? If not, do this. If you, it's just the same way that we are communicating with computer, we should actually communicate with each other.
There is
All
some
right.
amount of programming like that, yeah. Like, but yeah, communication flows and styles of communication can be afforded by a protocol that allows multimedia and all these things, right? Like, you should be able to build these. Anyways, yeah, you get the idea. Like, your communication infrastructure should be aligned with the style of communication that is productive for the team that you're in, for the people that you're around. And some of those things are hierarchical and some of those things are collaborative, and you should be able to play with these things. Yeah.
So this is what the current state of onboarding tools look like nowadays.
Yeah.
And you see it in emails too.
Yeah.
Like ConvertKit has something like this. This is good just to create tools for people to process information or getting aligned on information.
Yeah.
It can be a tool for communicating too. This is a no-code tool for building. I mean, this could also make it so easy for. Why am I so company oriented? They can build handbooks this way.
Well, it's the problem
Right.
that you have, right? So put it through that lens. It makes sense. Like,
If
I see this as an open communication architecture. Like, and the relationship between objects and people and medias in this architecture give you an enormous amount of lateral movement. And the purpose behind the majority of the flows that I'm interested in creating on top of this thing are increasing human agency, so that people are fuller people and are able to interact with each other in ways where they're coming. Yeah. Yeah. Depth at scale.
Up that scale. We got to shut this down soon
Okay.
because we got other things to do and I got to eat. Or you could keep going.
I think we're getting closer to like you're starting to pattern match it within the problem set that you have with Wayward and Three Drops and all these other things. Like, there is an instantiation of this thing that is for organizing the type of company and like business activity that we just talked about. All of these things tie together. Like, what are the types of what is the communication platform for Three Drops where you have this ability to build things up and break them down, and the CEOs can do this and
Yep.
like create adaptable communication structures based on what you were trying to achieve in that season, right? And what are the cyclical events and styles of culture that keep people involved, not just a fucking room that people go into and create a channel on. That is so primitive, I guess. So anyways, that's not here or there.
Wow.
no code communication builder, decision making tool,
Knowledge base, like,
knowledge.
how do you, all of these kinds of things, right? Like, and then how do you surface important information? How do you curate a feed of information coming through? Like, this is where you have a reader of, like, you have practices that the individuals are playing games with themselves and habituating, and that stuff goes into feeds, and then each person has the ability to like build their own algorithmic versions of those feeds so that they can see the important information in the system to them, and then they can see how other people are seeing the information in their systems, so you get this holographic view. You can follow the paths of information. It's how the internet is structured, right? But we need to
Yeah.
create like elegant constraints around this stuff.
Cool. So this is the tool I think we pretty much know kind of the feel for it, the feel of it. Now, what does it produce? I think that is going to be, if this is the builder, what does it produce? Does it produce it? Does it have to produce it here? Can it send it out to other places?
Yeah, so like what's the final product?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it varies, right? This
Yeah,
is
it depends
where,
on the
yeah,
flow you're building and the
the
yeah, there are
goals
all
of the
those
team, as
variables.
it
But
were, yeah. This is
It
where
can go.
you could democratize things in a way where it's like an expanded version of the 3 drops thing. So you have people doing all kinds of different, like, so I'm going to use it to create a manual for my company. I'm going to use it to create a blog post with a group of friends. I'm going to use it to write a family biography or something with my family. And then everybody shares like how they got there. And so then other people can take that stuff and then they could just copy it if they wanted to. It's the forking thing, or they
yep.
can take it and then remix it because they're like, oh, I like that, but what if I like just tweak this one part, or what if I combine these 2 things? So it's like plug and play.
It's a process builder. Like, and each of these processes is going to have inputs and outputs and cycles and people, right? So like that is that, right? And so this is where go read the Tao Te Ching, and it is function and form wrapped into one moving together. That's a Tao, right? Like it is in the process of enactment producing the output. The output is unimportant. The output is a byproduct of process. It should increase the possibility of process and continuing to play. But yeah, endpoints can be whatever: a blog, an image, a communication. I like the idea of representing the relationships between these things. That is one of the outputs. Um, but yeah, we're a ways off of that yet.
So we have a builder, then there is a second step of kind of remixing until you get to the solution. And once you got to whatever it is that's working, it can be pushed out to other places. It can be published as a blog post. It can be a wiki added as a thing to Notion. It can be a thing in Airtable. But we enable people to go from thoughts to processes, just like what Dave said. And here we take like, oh shit, when like weird noises.
Are you home alone? That's when it gets real crazy. When you're the only one around and you're like, shit's happening, I swear.
Now M is in the bedroom, but the sound come from this room. GitHub, we need a Git system to this a little bit.
Yeah, that's the sharing and repositories and forking and all this other stuff. There is some simplified version of that where people can look at your code base and then take that thing and rejigger it towards their own process. And these things need to be interoperable.
There's going to be a lot of noise, I think, in here.
Yeah.
Noise versus signal. So there's a lot of this that's not going to be turned into a post. It's just going to be sort of like, but it doesn't have to die on the vine. It's still valuable potentially to someone else or to you later. And it could be potentially useful to you in another group setting.
So it's back to the waste thing. Like you are creating a lot of waste, but that waste can be repurposed and you don't know when it's going to be valuable. It probably won't be valuable right away. Like that's not what these pipelines are for. You are processing as a way of understanding, as a way of making sense of the world. And then when things click, it's easy to go that. this. But it's a longer term process over time, right?
Oh, it's gonna be so easy to create groups with this.
We're already doing it. We got 3 of us.
Like no, I mean like create, because like this, like there is a reason why governments are in place, but there is no way for us to influence governments. But in a much smaller scale, there needs to be some rules for collaboration or living together or thinking or whatever the thing is. But if every person involved have the opportunity to adjust the framework,
Yes.
then you have a living handbook of processes that is actually up to date. Most handbooks are not. Which is this thing, but then the limitation of this comes from they want this to be open tech, open source, shared project, open source, and open tech. I mean, getting this and having it to this phase, and just so we use it ourselves, does it work? It takes us 3 weeks. But this becomes a challenge, and I think this should be secondary, not primary.
You
this
do
is
it commercial.
this is the obsession part of being a designer, by the way. Like let's just do a blog. I want this to be HTML, like core simplicity of things should go to the core and then up, from core up or from core out or whatever. If it was an open tech or an open source,
just think about the style of the current methodologies of open tech and open source. I think are too slow and cumbersome. There's a new way of doing this. Like
they don't work. Also,
they don't. So, like, I'll come up with better language on this and explain what I'm talking about. You can move fast with this model if you have aligned people. So the goal is getting alignment first. And once you're in alignment, you fucking move. You go fast. Rather than manufacturing alignment, which you can do. We know how to do this, but it does not produce like sustainable long-term thinking. It doesn't. Like the style of this thing needs to be people are coming to it to play in this environment because they are challenged by how fucking hard it is to coordinate this way. So come up with good ways of coordinating by using the system that we're building, right? We build it inside the model and then offer the model, and then people who like this type of challenge, it will draw in like people for whom they are very talented but need peers to operate like this. This is my guess. And then the market-based modeling of this will be contained, because ultimately this thing is not about making money. It's about helping people communicate and govern themselves, right? Like that has to be the forefront, and that has to remain sacred. If it does not, the market will capture it and it'll be fucked. It may get that way anyway, if we can even get it off the ground. But if you like, I don't need to make money on this. I don't need this thing to exist to make money. Like, and I'm not going to show up to do that, right? So I don't need it to grow enormously. I don't need it to be cool, like to make me look cool. I need it to exist to help people. And I will protect the shit out of it to get it to that place. And then when it opens up, it'll go. Like, but I sound like a nutcase with these things. I'm just, yeah. We got time. There's time.
Yeah, it's good thing. In my brain, time was yesterday. So it's good to approach it in a healthy way.
Exactly, which is hard for me because every time you offer me like, oh, we could have this in 3 weeks, I'm like, we could. Fuck no.
It's good to have the friction too of one person wanting to do it like very differently than another person, because then you have to explain why, and then you have to agree as a group what makes sense.
Yeah, and imagine the first tool that I ever shipped on our own was Roadmap, which is very like It's like this thing should just take this amount of time, then it
Yep,
comes
yep,
this,
yep.
and it comes this. This is the opposite of how I approach things.
It's wild. It is, and its wildness, it is part of its feature benefit. Like keeping it wild, keeping it open, like being able to move with that stuff. It's hard because you can't control it. You can only
Well, we're not
constrain
gonna
it.
be able to do that for that long either. It
No.
has a shelf life of
All right.
that phase. So I think we should do another game for the next time.
Okay.
Cool.
What's our
Maybe
game?
do the shared media one.
Yeah.
Just I think some things to think about. There needs to be stages to this with max number of people involved to get this at least out without
Yeah.
me freaking out. Then once you hit the stages, more people can get onboarded, and the responsibility for moving this forward or shaping this will all be equally shared.
Just imagine like the type of people that we are and the type of drive that we have. We're finding people like this. And like none of us want a boss. We want to come together and build. And there is a maximum size, like you're saying. I think it's 12 about that with like, but we're not going to get there for a while. Slowly finding, we've got what, five-ish people now? Like the other two guys that we're playing with, John and CJ. It requires a level of like maturity and openness and like commitment to a thing that we don't know what it is yet. I still don't know what this is. We're closer in understanding a little bit of it here, but the actual concrete picture of this, my felt sense is that we're like poking at an elephant, and we have the tiniest piece of the understanding of it. But yeah, you're right. Like we can't open this up to 500 people; it won't work. So
We
we're
still have
building
to
in the
keep.
structure. Yeah.
I think we still have to keep playing the small games and like doing
Yes.
it so we can get a feel for it, and then at a certain point broadening the game to include like Farzad, John, CJ, Dave, Kristen, Jason, like, and we're
Yes.
gonna get some women in here too. I've got a friend,
Yeah.
Via, who wants to be a part of it. I'm gonna keep an eye out for this. What is it about this that attracts more masculine energy versus feminine?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see, and maybe that it's not true. Like that's a fallacy that I've come up with in my head. But I think there's something about this that's pretty vulnerable and like risky to like put yourself out like this. So this is where I was talking to Via, and I was like, she's interested, and I was like, well, that makes sense. You're an entrepreneur, like you take risks. So women who are comfortable, like probably in like leadership or entrepreneurial roles, they won't ask that many questions. They'll just be like, yeah, throw me in.
Yep.
Hypothesis.
It's a good one.
So what should our shared media be? Have you seen anything recently, read anything, Farzad, that you think would be good as a group to do the black box game?
Mm.
Mm.
Things like that, you always want to go for things that you think might surprise you if people answer honestly.
Mm-hmm. Dave, have you read anything like or seen
I got
anything?
a million things, but I can go back through and look at like I have a bunch of starred articles and stuff like that. I can maybe pick one that I think that like our perspectives might be novel or interesting, like blog posts and stuff. Like I have newsletters coming in, and then I create a curated list that I go back through and look once I'm smarter. So I can just pick one out of that stack.
You're smarter.
Yeah, because a lot of times I run into something and it like blows my brain open, but I'm not smart enough to actually understand why. So because I don't have enough information yet. So these kinds of things, I mean, selfishly, I'd like to know what other people think about them, right? And then it doesn't work when I just send them to people because they don't have the time to look at all this crazy shit that I like find in the pile. So if you're down to do that, I can send something. It'll be hopefully interesting conversation.
Yeah, pick something based on our group where you think it would push us.
Does that work, Farzad?
Sounds good.
Okay.
And then we'll do the actual black box where we don't share it until the time of the meeting.
Yep.
Does
That we
this thing
talked
have a
about.
chat? Oh yeah, it does. Oh shit. Wrong thing. Oh, cannot delete. Well, it's out there now. I meant to share the Figma link with editing access, so anybody who has it
Cool.
can move
Let's
things around.
put this.
Sweet.
Let's see.
What a cool thing it would be if it's from the beginning until this thing comes out, months later.
Years.
It's all shared like this.
Yeah. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Or just
Like-
like David Farzad going back and forth, like, yeah, when this thing comes out in a month, and Dave's like years, and then like
Decades.
20 minutes later. So, like next week when it's out, and Dave's like, no, like a month from now. Oh, no, next week. Oh, okay.
Gotta have the attentions. Anyways, thanks for doing the Figma thing. That pushing me there is good because I don't want to get into that territory just yet, but it works. I like it when I'm in there. So yeah, appreciate it.
Can we share
It's
that with
fun.
CJ?
Yeah.
We can.
I mean,
talk
at some point, we're probably going to share the link in the description of these videos later
Yep.
to see what happens.
Yeah, so can you use our YouTube channel to just pull your
Yeah.
videos in? Okay.
Huh? How does that work?
So we're uploading the videos to our Buzzard YouTube channel. If
Yeah,
you could,
that works. I pull from there.
so you don't have to do anything. Does that work for you, Dave?
It's fine by me. I mean, I don't care however we distribute these things. Like, if you want to do it separately because it's redundancy, because you want to add different context to the videos potentially, I think we're fine to do that. It's up to whatever makes sense. For now, we're going to post all of them on Buzzard. If that works for you, then it does. If it doesn't, then we can share the files. I think that I want to figure out like a file management system that's distributed for all of us so that we can just drop them in and anybody can do whatever the hell they want with them. Like, because we are sharing all the media in common, but context matters for these things. So you will have a different audience than we have. And I think that's good. It's another multi-perspective thing. So like the idea that it's only posted in one place is unimportant. So, but yeah. One of the things we're going to do is like take these things that we're posting and then put them into our feeds in the communication system. And then we are managing the relationships between them. So we'll get there. For now, populating feeds, that's the way to go. But yeah. Cool. All right. Food time. And sleep time for
Sleeping
you.
time.
I imagine
Yeah.
fucking right before bed doing all this. I don't know how the hell you do it.
It's 2:30 a.m.
You're a
Someone's got to do
maniac.
it.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Another Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another Wednesday.
Good thing we
Right.
started 1 hour earlier though.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I don't know how we're doing this.
It's because it's an endless pile of fun. This is why it's going to take years. But that's good.
It means months.
What else are you going to do? Whatever. Your years are in months. I got longer months than you. Cool.
All right.
All right, guys.
See you
Bye.
guys next week. Bye.